All right. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. How is everyone?
Good.
Tired? Yeah, I can relate. Much better. Oh, it's yesterday was absolutely amazing. Mama finally got on the program and she now is taking such good care of him and he's doing amazing. She's doing amazing. I'm a proud puppy mama now. So yeah, he is just adorable. Adorable. We named him Jet. Yeah, because he's jet black. So we named him Jet. But he's also very fast. For a 2-day-old puppy, this thing moves. All right. So you had chapter 7 over since the last class. When I call your name, if you can tell me your scores, of course, grading scale is on page 201. If you sorry, you can just let me know how many you missed as well. Victoria?
100.
Thank you. Janelle? Elizabeth? Zachary? Kiara? Paula?
100.
Thank you. Paula, do you have 1 through 4 yet? Okay, it's fine. Neftali?
100.
Do you have 4, 5, and 6 for me? Jeff? So the tests for on page 184, 185, and 186.
Yes.
Okay. So page 184.
Pass.
Okay, you got them all right?
Yes, pass.
Okay. What about 185? All right. Okay. What about 186?
Two.
2 wrong? Okay, so it's a 90. Very good. Isabel?
90.
Thank you. Andrea? Cassidy? Giselle? Lacey?
1.
Thank you. Queenie?
90%.
Thank you. Do you guys have any questions on what you missed? Number 2. All right, let me get there. Okay, so number 2 asks, when is an appropriate time to obtain vital signs? When is an appropriate time to obtain vital signs? A, right after breakfast. B, during activities. C, at least 20 minutes after eating or drinking. Or D, when the patient is visiting with family. So let me explain. Vital signs is going to include temperature. So vital signs is temperature, pulse, respirations, and blood pressure. Those are what together cumulatively we call vital signs. So because temperature is involved there, we don't want to take a temperature right after somebody has had something to eat or drink because the food is usually either hot or cold, and that's going to affect the temperature. We also don't want to take vital signs right after activity because that gets the pulse rate up and the respiration rate up. So we want the calmest patient possible to take vital signs. So the best option there is to wait at least 20 minutes after eating or drinking. A would not be right because of the temperature of food. B would not be right because activity is going to elevate the heart rate and respirations. And D is not going to be right. How many of you guys have a family? Have they ever gotten you riled up? Yeah. So because there can be some emotional interplay, with patients visiting with families, there could be, some sadness because they're leaving, happiness because they're there. I mean, there's a lot of emotion. But also, we want to protect their time together. If we're in there taking vital signs, that's going to really kind of interfere with their ability to visit well. Does that make sense? Everybody good? Any others on chapter 7? Any others?
Number 5.
5. Okay. So number 5 asks, which is not a measure to reduce pain? So, unfortunately, pain is something that we're going to encounter quite a bit in healthcare. So we have to know some measures to help reduce pain and make the patient more comfortable. Remember, a lot of what we do is all about patient comfort, right? So keeping the patient perfectly still at all times, we can't do that. Patients have to move for circulation, for skin integrity, for respiratory, be able to breathe well. I mean, there's a lot of reasons we want them to move. Keeping them perfectly still, not a good idea.
And laying in one position for so long also causes pain.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Report complaints of pain promptly to the nurse. Yeah, that's a good one. We definitely need to do that. Giving back rubs, that's a good one because back rubs, like we talked about with partial bed bath, can be very soothing and it can help with just kind of overall feelings of well being. Providing a calm, quiet environment, that's a good one because remember, anxiety, a lot of activity around you, a cluttered environment, all of those things will make the patient more irritable, which will enhance pain. So the question asks, which one of these is not a measure to reduce pain? So that means that 3 of them are going to be right. Three of them are going to be things we do want to do. And one is something that we don't want to do. So which one would we not want to do there? Keep the patient still. Good? Makes sense? Any other questions?
Number 9.
9. 1 ounce is equivalent to how many cc's or mLs? We're actually going to go over this in detail today. Your book did talk about it a little bit, but the answer is 30. So for every ounce, it's equal to 30 cc's or mLs, and we'll go over that today. Okay, good. Any others? No others? All right. Okay. A little behind on my checkoff sheet here. Hold on a second. Okay. So let's go here. Let's review what we've learned so far. We're going to do this very quickly before we move on to learning some new skills. So how do we know what to do with each patient? Yeah, we follow the care plan, the whole care plan, and okay. What are we going to do while we're following the care plan? Observe. That's right. And who do we report those observations to?
Nurse.
The nurse. Every skill starts with the opening. Every opening starts with a knock. Once we knock, who are we going to greet?
The patient.
And how are we going to identify them? What do they need to know about us?
Our name and our title.
Okay. And then what are we going to let them know? Yeah, what we're there to do. Insert name of task here. What do we need to get from them?
Permission.
Permission. And then once we get permission, what are we going to close? After we've touched that curtain, what do we need to do? Wash our hands, and then we can gather our supplies. Every skill requires that we evaluate for gloves. So if we're going to evaluate for gloves, how do we know when we should wear them? Body, yeah, very good. Body fluids, non-intact skin, and personal skin. Very, very good. What's the first thing those gloves should touch?
The patient.
The patient. And then once we've touched the patient, are our gloves clean or dirty?
Dirty.
So we've got to be careful about what we're touching in the environment. Don't cross-contaminate. And then we have to remove those gloves properly. How do we do that? Pinch. And then under. Very good. Very good. Okay. If we're going to use supplies, we have to have a place to put them. So we're going to use a barrier. A barrier provides a clean area for clean supplies. Very good. And we were talking about flashcards a little while ago. All of these banners right here with the spaces for you to fill in, these are in the flashcard sets for you to be able to review this. So those of you at home, these flashcards might help you if you're not physically in the classroom, so that you can see these and be able to kind of work with them on your own. So it provides a clean place to put our clean supplies. We only want to touch our supplies with what kind of hands? Clean hands. What can the supplies not touch? Your uniform. And when should we get that barrier? When we get all of the supplies? Before. Okay, very good. All right. So sometimes we need a little extra layer of privacy, particularly if the patient's going to be what? When do we use a privacy blanket? Yeah, uncovered or undressed. Very good. So those blankets are there to keep the patient both warm and to provide some privacy. So we call it a privacy blanket. Now, guys, you can use anything as a privacy blanket. You can use a towel. You can use a sheet. You can use a blanket. You can use anything. But in healthcare, we use a very specific one called a bath blanket or privacy blanket. Okay. When we put that on, what do we have to be careful not to do?
Not to touch the floor.
Okay, not touch the floor. Very good. And not shake or snap. Very good. So should we take the sheet completely off the bed and then put the blanket on? No. How should we do this so the patient stays covered?
Blanket first and then remove the sheet.
Very good. So blanket on top, sheet comes off underneath. Very good. At the end of the skill, when we're all done, when do we want to remove that blanket? Before or after we take our gloves off?
Before.
Okay.
After.
If
Cooties.
yeah.
So we want to
So we've got cooties on our gloves and we've got to pull that sheet up because remember, your patient can't be laying in bed uncovered. We have to pull that sheet up. So we don't want to touch that sheet that's going to go right up next to his face with cootie covered gloves. Make sense? So we're going to remove the privacy blanket after. This is going to be very important today, by the way, the skill that we're going to learn today. We have to remove the privacy blanket after we remove our gloves. Okay? Good? All right. So sometimes we need to use linens to do skills. And some of the skills that we're going to do today are going to have linens involved. What can't the linens touch? The floor or your uniform. Very good. Very good. What kind of hands do we have to get our linens? Clean. So, time out for a second. This is an important rule. We have to have clean hands to get our linens. Yeah, remember, all these rules are on the back wall. So when you're practicing, that becomes your cheat sheet, guys. You won't have those in the testing room, though. Keep that in mind. But that becomes your cheat sheet. All right, so we have to think about this for a second. If we're doing a skill and we don't get enough linens and we have to go back and get more, what kind of hands do we need? Clean hands. So once you started your skill, are your hands clean? So what would you need to do before you go get your linens? Wash your hands. Keep that in mind. That's actually a very important principle. You have to have clean hands to get your linens. Well, your hands are already clean at the beginning when you're gathering your supplies. That's okay. But this is really important if you have to stop and go back and get something that you forgot. Okay, good. All right. So when we're working with linens, we have a principle: clean rolls toward and dirty rolls away. And this is how we prevent what we call gross contamination, cross-contamination, because as we roll the clean one toward us and the dirty one away, the only things that's touching are the bottom sides of each. Okay. All right. And if we take too many items, what should we do with those items at the end of the skill? Discard them. Don't leave them in the room. Very good. All right. Where does the patient need to be at all times? In the middle of the bed. And can we rely on side rails to keep them there? No, because we don't have side rails in all settings. If we do want to use side rails, what needs to be in place for us to use side rails? A doctor's order. That's right. So you guys can't decide this on your own. When you're going to turn a patient, do you just, like they're laying on their back in the middle of the bed, do you just roll them right off the bed? What step do we need to do first? Scoot them toward us. And then roll them which way? Toward us? Away from us? Away. All right. So why do we have to scoot them toward us first? All right. So that after the turn, they remain in the middle of the bed. Good. Remember that we remain behind the patient's behind. Don't ever roll a patient towards you. All right. All bathing is done the same way. When we get water for bathing, what do we not want to put in the basin? Soap, because we need rinsing water. When we're going to go get water, how are we going to turn that faucet on? Paper towel. And we're going to check the water. How should it feel? Okay. Who else has to check the water? The patient. Okay. If we're going to wash a wet body opening, you're going to see this again today, by the way. We're going to wash a wet body opening like eyes, nose, mouth, genitals, rectal area, wounds, rashes, sores, or incisions. We need a special process. Anybody remember what that special process? The leaves method. Very, very good. Whatever we wash, whatever we rinse, and don't get your surface wet. If your surface gets wet, should you ignore it? No, you have to address it. Yeah. If we're going to put lotion on, what do we do first? What do we do after? Right. Very good. All right. All basins are cleaned the same way. Rinse, dry, store. Pretty much it. Rinse, dry, store. But because your hands have not been washed, you don't want to touch the drawer. So what do we need to open the drawer? Paper towel. You probably don't want to touch your soap and lotion either with those hands. So you can use that same paper towel to get your soap and lotion. Good? Questions? All right. Then we have shoe rules. We just finished this one up on Monday. If the patient's feet hit the floor, we have to talk about their shoes. Are slipper socks ever enough? I don't care what that nurse tells you. Slipper socks are not enough. Nurses don't always think this through. When I was in nursing school, I was trained you just have slipper socks on your patient. You walk them where they need to go. They aren't thinking about the infection control part of this. So I want you to know shoes are important. Okay. And if you kind of explain that a little bit to your nurse is going to go, oh my gosh, you're right. And then you'll seem super smart. Cool. All right. If we're going to use a gait belt, how do we know it's tight enough? 4 fingers. Where does the gait belt have to go? Whose waist? The patient's waist. Very good. Very good. Before we lift a patient, how do their feet need to be positioned? Flat on the floor. Okay. And what should we do before we lift them to a standing position? Count to 3. Where should their arms be? On your shoulders. Once we get them standing up, we're going to ask them if they're okay, dizzy, weak, whatever word you want to use, that's fine. And then before we return them back to the chair, what do they need to know before we sit them back down? Right. They have to know the chair is there. So they're going to feel it behind their legs and let us know that. We want to use proper body mechanics for this skill. So remember, that's not knee to knee, toe to toe. It's at an oblique angle. Okay. 1 foot in front, 1 foot beside. That keeps you much steadier as you're lifting them. Helps prevent or reduce the amount of falls. All right, so every skill ends the same way. We have to end the skill with clean hands and a patient who feels cared for and about. So that's what the closing is all about. So we want to make sure the environment is clean. We want to make sure the bed is in the lowest position. Good morning. The bed is in the lowest position. The patient needs to be, I'm trying to figure out how to lead you here. What needs to be over the patient before we leave them? Blanket, sheet, clothing, something, right? We can't just leave an undressed patient uncovered in the bed. So patient has to be covered. Okay. We have to ask a specific question of them, and it has to use a specific word. Anybody know what that is? Are you comfortable? A comfort is more than just physical. It's also emotional. Yeah. So what can we offer them? Yeah, a magazine or something. It's so funny because I get all these comments on my YouTube channel. Like over the last week, I don't know what happened, but everybody has kind of latched onto this magazine thing, and I'm getting all kinds of comments like, Patty sure does like her magazines. Somebody says, hey, Miss Patty, I've got one final question, ... Would you like a magazine? So people are having a lot of fun with that. But remember that magazines are there as kind of a placeholder. We're just trying to address their emotional comfort. It may not be a magazine. It may be a TV channel or crossword puzzle book or their cell phone. Like that's my main source of entertainment now is my cell phone. We can also adjust the head of the bed to make it comfortable for them. All of those things fall under that umbrella of comfort. Good. We also want to open the privacy curtain and hand them the call light. Right. Once we've done all of those things, we want to wash those cooties off of our hands, right? Because we have to end the skill with clean hands. But what if we have to, good morning, what if we have to document? When in that process should we document? After we wash our hands. Okay. But we've got this rule here. End skill with clean hands. So if we wash our hands and document, what do we have to do again? Wash our hands again. So any questions on those? No? All right, let's look at pulse. When we're taking a pulse, what needs to be supported? Okay, the arm, the elbow, the joints. Yeah. What time period do we always report pulse rates over? 1 minute. Doesn't matter how long you count, we have to report it over 1 minute. So if you're counting for 30 seconds, you would have to multiply that by 2 to get your 1 minute reading. If you're counting for 15 seconds, you would have to multiply it by 4 to get your 1 minute reading. But how do we know which method we need to use? The care plan. Very good. What is our normal pulse rate? 60 to 100. What if we got something out of that range? What do we do? Report it to the nurse. Okay. What finger do we not want to use to take a pulse? The thumb. So which fingers are we going to use? Okay, index and middle. And what part of those fingers are we going to use? The tips or the flat? Tips. Okay. All right. And where is the radial pulse located? At the thumb side or the pinky side? Thumb side. Way down here or up at the bendy part? Up at the bendy part. Okay. How do they know for the test when you start and stop counting? Guys. Okay. And anything that we count, we have to document. Very good. Good. All right. Dressing a resident. Remember USA first. So we're going to ask what they want to wear. Now, you can suggest an alternative. It's okay if they come up with something really crazy. You can suggest something else. But we're going to ask them. When should we get that clothing? Before or after we undress them? Before. We're minimizing exposure. Very good. When we lift an extremity, how do we lift? Are we the claw machine at Walmart? Do we lift like this? From below with a flat palm. Very good. Very good. And which arm gets undressed first? Strong arm. Which arm gets dressed first? The weak arm. All right. We don't want to overextend or force movement. Very good. Very good. We're going to adjust that clothing at the end of the skill, right? Make sure all the buttons line up and pants are in the right place and all of that. And where do the soiled items go? Hamper. Can I put them on the floor? No. Okay. Call light is in which hand? Stronger hand. All right. Hand and nail care. When we're moving that arm, what do we need to do as we're moving it? support it. Are you starting to see a theme? Right? Anything we move, we have to
Support.
support. Yeah. Think of it like child support. We're going to soak the hand in
Water.
water. Yeah, clean, warm water. Are we putting soap in that basin?
No.
No. We're going to take it out. So if there's no soap in the basin, how do we wash? If there's no soap in the basin, how do we wash that hand?
Get a
Put
rag.
soap in your towel.
So what? Yeah, we're going to use a washcloth and put the soap on the washcloth. Should that washcloth be drippy, wet, messy? What do we have to do to make sure it's not drippy, wet, messy?
Bring it out.
Wring it out really well. So we're going to wring the washcloth out, apply soap to the washcloth, and wash. So now that we've washed, what do you want to do? Rinse. After you've rinsed, what do you want to do? Dry. Okay. And then we're going to clean under the nails. Which end of the orange stick do we want to use? Pointy or slanty? Slanty. Okay. And what do we want to do before we move on to the next nail?
Wipe it.
Wipe it off. Very good. Very good. We're going to use an emery board to file those rough edges, but how do we file?
In one direction.
One direction toward the middle. Very good. And when do we apply lotion for this skill? Yeah, we're going to apply lotion last after. Now, there's a reason for that, because if you apply lotion first, you can't file the nails very well. The lotion is going to make those nails more flexible, and they're not going to file as nicely. So lotion must be applied last. Good? All right, making an occupied bed, we're going to change the bottom sheet a half at a time. But to do this, we want the patient to take up the least amount of space in the bed. So what position does a patient need to be in for us to do this? Okay, on their side in the middle of the bed. Very good. So clean is going to roll toward me. Dirty rolls away. Very good. Keeping the patient in the middle of the bed at all times, right? All right. We're going to remove that bottom sheet out once we have it half clean, half soiled. We'll turn the patient over on the other side, remove that bottom sheet out, and connect the new clean sheet. This is kind of like a magic trick. Like, you can make money at parties for this. Hey, I bet you I can make the bed and you won't even have to get out of it. Right? Kind of like a party trick. That's the hardest part, is changing the bottom sheet when somebody's in bed. So you're going to turn them on their side, change half of the bed, turn them on the other side, finish the job. Good? Good. And then we want to put a top sheet on. Now, when we put that top sheet on, we need to make sure that it doesn't touch the floor. How are we going to do that with the corners? We're going to use hospital corners. That's right. Remember, hospital corners are all about getting the corners of the sheet tucked underneath the mattress so they don't touch the floor. Good? Good. Once we put the sheet on and make those hospital corners, though, that sheet's going to be a little tight. So where do we need to loosen the sheet? Yeah, over the feet to give them a little wiggle room. Very good. And then when we replace that pillowcase, where does the opening need to face? Away from the door. All right. Sideline position. We're going to scoot which way? Toward us or away from us? Toward us. And then we roll the patient away. Very good. Patient must be in what area of the bed? The middle of the bed. Very good. All right. In order to turn a patient effectively, we have to move all four of their extremities. Furthest arm goes, closest arm crosses the chest. Closest knee is bent with a foot flat on the bed. Furthest knee is, angled out, positioned away. Very good. Once you get them in the right position, then you just roll them onto their side. We need to use some pillows to keep them there, though. First pillow is going to go behind the back. We're putting that pillow behind the back. What shape does it need to be in at the end? A roll. Very good. Then the second pillow is going to go between their knees and ankles. Third pillow goes under the upper arm. Yep. And what about that last pillow on the bed? Do we get to ignore it?
No, it needs to be under their head and neck.
Head and neck. Very good. Where does the call light go for this skill? In which hand?
The one by the pillow.
Okay, the bottom hand. That's right, because we don't want the cord stretched over their neck. Good? Question? Foot care, just like hand and nail care, a little lower and nothing with the nails. So we're going to soak the foot in water. We're going to support it as we take it out to wash it. We're going to put it back in the basin to rinse. We're going to take it out and support it when we. So when a hand or a foot is out of the basin, should it just be laying on the table? What should it be on? A towel, softer surface. Yeah, very good. Very good. So once we washed, rinsed, and dried, what are we really there to do? Observe. Yeah. So you have to say something during the test, like I'm looking at the skin. Right. After all that, we're going to apply some lotion. What do we have to do before we put lotion on? What do we do after we put lotion on? Where do we not want to put lotion on? Between the toes. Very good. And then at the end of the skill, we're going to put the patient's sock and shoe back on. When we put the sock on, we have to make sure that there are no wrinkles and the toe seam is, yeah, across the toes. Yeah. And the shoe needs to be fastened appropriately. Okay. Mouth care. How do you brush teeth? Don't overthink this, guys. Do not overthink this. What do you have to do to a toothbrush before you put toothpaste on it? Wet it. How much toothpaste are we using? Yeah, a little bit. Little bit. What are you going to brush? Whatever they got. Yeah. Teeth, gums, whatever. Top, bottom, front, back, tongue. No time requirement here. But what position does the patient need to be in for all of that to happen? They need to be sitting up. Correct. So that's a very important checkpoint for this skill. You need to make sure they're sitting up. But sitting up in bed and brushing, probably stuff going to get everywhere. So how are we going to protect their clothing? With a towel. Once we've brushed, they have to have the opportunity to, how many? Once, twice?
Depends on the patient.
Yeah, whatever they need. Absolutely. Absolutely. And then we're just going to clean our basin like we clean everything else. Rinse, dry, store. Okay. At the end of the skill, this patient's mouth should be left and dry. Very good. Good. Awesome job, guys. Look how much you've learned. And it's only been 3 weeks. I want you to think about that for a second. We have only been here. This is class 6. And we're reviewing everything that we've learned up to this point. So in 5 classes, you've learned all of this. That's amazing. You guys have done an amazing job. And I'm super proud of you. But we're not done yet. Respirations. What can we not tell the patient? Respirations are always counted over what time period? 1 minute. How do we know how long to actually count? The care plan. What's our normal values? 12 to 20. And how do you count respirations? Do you count on the in? Do you count on the out? Do you count both the in and the out? Okay, so in and out together makes 1. Okay. How do the evaluators know that you're when you start counting and when you stop? You got to tell them. You got to say start and stop. And then since we're counting something, what do we have to remember to do? Document. All right. Range of motion. Remember, CNAs do range of motion exercises to retain function. So we're not trying to make anything better. If they can only go to here, that's as far as we're going to go. There's 3 exercises we do as CNAs. There's flexion extension, which is what kind of a movement? There's abduction, adduction, which is what kind of a movement? And then there's rotation, which is what kind of a movement? Around. How do we know what body parts to exercise? How do we know what exercises to do? How do we know how many repetitions to do? So our life is all about the care plan. Very good. All right. When we are lifting extremities, how do we do it? From above? From below. All right. So we have to provide support at all times. But where are we providing that support? At the joints. Very good. When we're doing this, do we want to do this fast? Get it done? Slow. And we have to make sure that we go all the way back to start position. Very good. Very good. Oh, I'm so proud of you guys. All right, denture care. Told you we learned a lot. Denture care, just like mouth care, with an extra step, right? We're going to clean the dentures as well as mouth. So when we are cleaning dentures, we have to protect those dentures. So what do we want to put in the sink? Washcloth, a towel, something like that. What kind of water do we want to use? Cold. When we're done cleaning the dentures, we're going to put them in a clean denture cup on a, remember, barrier, paper towel, something. Remember that denture cup is wet. Very good. Let's see here. Oops. All right. We have to make sure that the patient is sitting in, or is, I just gave you the answer, is in what position to do denture care? A sitting position. Very good. And let's see here. Oh, yeah. Must be sitting fully upright. Sorry. When we're going to be doing the mouth care portion, we have to protect their clothing, yeah, whatever they've got on, right? We're going to brush all surfaces just like we did with mouth care. No time requirement here. How often does the patient spit? As often as they need to. Okay. And we want at the end, we want to make sure the patient's mouth and clothing are clean and dry. Very good. Very good. Before we put anything on any kind of a brush, whether it's a denture brush or a toothbrush, what do we have to do first? Wet it. All right, ambulate with a gait belt. Remember, your eyes have to be on the patient at all times. We're watching them. And in fact, in one of the Facebook groups, another one, this is why I do what I do, okay? There was a comment, it was either Monday afternoon or yesterday, I can't remember which, but the CNA wrote in, I was walking a patient and the patient fell. I don't know what happened, but do you think I'm going to get in trouble? So what do you guys think about that? I was walking the patient. I don't know what happened, but they fell. Do you think I'm going to get in trouble?
They wasn't paying attention to the patient.
Okay, so they weren't paying attention for clues. Do you think they're going to get in trouble?
Yes.
Do you think they should get in trouble?
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, should it really be about them?
No.
Who should it be about?
The patient.
The patient. So instead of saying, oh my gosh, I feel horrible, my patient fell, what can I learn from this? It was the patient fell. Am I going to get in trouble? Do you understand the difference there? Okay. So remember on day one, I told you my hardest job in teaching you was to get you to make that switch from I'm testing, it's all about me, checkpoints, to it's all about the patient. And you guys have already done that. Congratulations. Good job. All right. So eyes have to be on the patient at all times. When do we apply the gait belt? When the patient's standing, walking, sitting. All right. Where does the gait belt go? Around the waist. Under or over the clothing? Over the clothing. All right. So when we're walking them, where should our hand be? Under the belt, kind of in their back or around the side. So we've got some leverage there. Who's leading, me or the patient? The patient. So we're going to walk slightly behind and to one side so we can see them. Remember, eyes on the patient at all times. As we're walking, what should we be asking or paying attention to? Yeah. How are they feeling? Are they dizzy? Are they weak? What's going on with them? And when we bring them back to the chair, what do they have to feel behind them before we sit them down? When we take that gait belt off, what can't we do?
Rub the skin.
Yeah, slide the belt or rub the skin. Very good. Very good. All right, partial bed bath, face to waist, front and back, one arm. Okay, that was partial bed bath. What area we're going to wash first? And do we put soap on the washcloth? No. Okay. So face first, no soap. What method are we going to use for this skill? The leaves method, and that prevents cross-contamination in wet body openings. Very good. We want to control that washcloth. Remember, no floppy edges. You want to make sure everything's under control. And when we are lifting the arm to wash it, what do we have to do as we're lifting? Support it. Very good. Very good. What if that water gets cold or soapy? Because this is a very long skill and you're going to be very slow because you're new, and that's okay because you're new. But during that slowness, that water could get a little more or a little cooler. It could get soapy. So what would you do if you notice that the water is cool or soapy? Change the water. Should we ignore it for the test? No, because at any time that evaluator can wander by and put their finger in that water and check it. You have to be aware of that. So if we're going to clean the back, what position does the patient need to be in? On their side. So that means we have to do what before we turn them on their side? Scoot them toward us. Very good. And we're going to wash, rinse, dry the back. Give them a little back rub with lotion. Lotion's important. We don't want friction. Remember, we're wearing gloves for this, so we don't want friction against the skin. So lotion is important. But if we're going to use lotion, what do we have to do first? What do we have to do after? Wipe it off. Very good. All right. And at the end of the skill, we're going to make sure the patient's in a clean gown. Clean bodies deserve clean clothes. All right. So that was a whole lot of stuff that we've gone through. This is the last review I do with you. Okay. So I won't be reviewing these in the lessons next week. So if you need additional review, if you weren't able to answer all of those prompts easily yourself, flashcards are probably going to help you because remember, I have all of those in flashcard form. Okay. All right. So transferring from bed to wheelchair is where we're starting today. This is on page 72 of your skills book. Okay. You're fine. You're fine. All right. Wheelchair 101. And the good news is today, there's nothing new to teach you as far as principles. Everything on that back wall you already know. Every bit of it. I told you we're going to learn them all, but I told you I wasn't going to make you memorize them. I was going to help you learn them. And you were able to do that. So no new principles to learn here. But we do need to learn a little bit about the wheelchair itself. So that's what we're going to focus on with this skill. We're going to learn about the wheelchair. So if you look here, you'll see we already know skill rules, the opening, glove rules, shoe rules, transfer, shoe rules and the closing. So we're going to go over transfer. These are test-specific checkpoints that only apply to this skill. I have a video for this. I have kind of the Cliff Notes version. Here's all of those principles spelled out. And down here is information on the test. So this skill, we're going to transfer somebody from bed to wheelchair. Somebody with your level of experience should be able to do this within 11 minutes. We're taking a body from there and putting it in here. That does not take 11 minutes. They're giving you way more time than you need. Do not speed through this skill. Because if you speed through this skill, this has a lot of safety to it. This skill is the biggest safety graded skill we have. Because this is where a lot of patient injuries occur. A lot. So don't speed through this. It doesn't take 11 minutes to get a patient from there to the wheelchair. Take your time. Think about this all the way through. Because like I said, this skill is almost 100% safety. All right, so let's get into it. All right, page 73 gives us our step-by-step instructions. Supplies are at the bottom of the page here, and our care plan's at the top. Care plan tells us to transfer the resident from bed into the wheelchair. The resident is unable to walk or take steps. I want you to underline that or highlight it. Resident is unable to walk or take steps, but can stand with support. A gait belt or transfer belt is required to transfer the resident, and the resident will stay in the room. Can I ask you to do something for me? Can I just have you turn around and look at that wall for me? Okay. So our care plan, I have a reason for this, but just stare at that wall. So this care plan is pretty specific, right? It tells us the resident is unable to walk or take steps, but can stand with support. A gait belt or transfer belt is required to transfer the resident, and the resident will stay in the room. So let me ask you a question. How comfortable are you facing the wall when everybody else is not? Does it feel kind of like a punishment? Yeah, it probably, you can turn back around. It probably is also a little bit boring, right? Not a whole lot to look at there. When you put a patient into a wheelchair and you leave them in their room, do you think they should be facing the wall? What should they be facing? Anything but the wall. TV, door, roommate, window, something. Do not just put a patient in a wheelchair and leave them staring at a blank wall, because they may feel that it's a punishment. They may feel that it's isolation. They're definitely going to be bored out of their mind. And when they're bored, they're going to hit that call light. So these are all things we need to be aware of. Remember, it's not about us and the mechanics. Well, I got the patient out of the bed in the wheelchair. What more do you want? I want the patient to feel cared about as well as cared for. Remember, that's a big part of what we do. It's not the task, it's the patient, right? So when you do this skill, if you leave that patient facing the wall, it's going to count against you big. Now, again, somebody put on one comment on one of my videos, I can't believe they failed me because the patient was facing the wall. Why did I fail over that? Again, the focus was on, I missed this step. What did they not take into consideration? The patient, right? So you're starting to see how that test is graded, right? It's not about you and the steps. It's about how those steps impact the patient. Okay, so let's get into how to do this. All right, shoe rules are going to apply for this skill. Your patient starts out laying in bed. We're going to get them sitting on the side of the bed, but no one wears shoes in bed. So when we get them sitting on the side of the bed, they're just going to have those slipper socks on. So for this skill, you're actually going to have to put shoes on the patient for real, like put them on. Now, the test is going to help you out a little bit here, just a little. And they don't want me to tell you this, so we're going to keep this our secret. For this skill, they are going to try to find somebody your body size or smaller. They're not going to partner you up with somebody much larger than you for the test. Your body size or smaller. And they're going to try to find somebody that fits that criteria that has slip-on shoes. You are my patient for this skill. Okay. So did you see that? You didn't even notice I assessed that, did you? That's because I'm a nurse. I assess as easy as I breathe. That's one thing you have to know about nurses. Okay. So they're going to, as you get checked in, they're going to look at your body sizes. And let's say that you have this skill, transfer out of bed. As everybody comes in, I'm going to be kind of checking out your feet. because I've got to get somebody your body size or smaller that has hopefully slip-on shoes to make this a little easier. If I don't have anybody wearing slip-on shoes, then we're just going to have to tie shoes. But they do try to make this a little bit easier, because where do those evaluators want to be? In their pool, drinking their Mai Tais. They do not want to be watching you tie shoes. Okay. So they are going to try to simplify this a little bit for you. All right. So there's a big debate out there in CNA testing world as to whether those shoes should be put on when the patient is laying in bed before we sit them up, or after the patient is sitting up. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Me personally, I don't like putting shoes on in bed, because all of those pathogens that are on the shoes are now, I don't like that. Me personally, I don't like that. So I will make sure that I sit the patient up before I put shoes on. But some people will put shoes on in bed and it doesn't mark you off on the test. I don't like it, but nobody asked Miss Patty. Okay. All right. We do have to put shoes on the patient before we transfer them, though. The patient's shoes or feet hit the floor, we have to talk about the shoes. So we're going to get the patient sitting up on the side of the bed and then put shoes on, make sure they're fastened appropriately. It's really funny. A certain amount of people that take the test will transfer the patient. Once they're in the wheelchair, they'll put their shoes on. The whole point of shoes is to make sure the transfer is safe. Okay. Remember I said the skill is really, really safety oriented? Slipper socks are not enough to keep that patient safe. We will put a gait belt around. We're going to make sure it's snug. We're going to check it with 4 fingers. And we're going to make sure those feet are flat on the floor. Now, remember when I was sitting in the chair for Ambulate and I showed you my feet did not hit, was not flat on the floor? This bed is higher than that chair. So if my feet aren't flat on the floor in a chair, they're not going to be flat on the floor on the bed. So I'm going to have to scoot forward to get my feet flat. This is important. Make sure you check this. Again, we're going to count to 3 before we lift them. That doesn't change. We're going to use the same body mechanics that we used with Ambulate. That doesn't change. We're not learning anything new here. Same body mechanics. And then before we sit them down, they have to feel that chair behind them. That's the same rule that we learned before. So all of this is kind of a repeat of Ambulate. But let's look at the skill-specific steps that makes us a little bit different than Ambulate. And this, what I had you underline or highlight, is really the important part of this skill. They are unable to walk or take steps. So that means if we don't have that wheelchair close enough, that patient is going to have to take a step. Our care plan says they can't, which means that we are now overextending our reach to try to get them to that wheelchair. Much more likely that we're going to drop them or we're both going to fall. Injuries. So because our care plan says they cannot walk or take steps, that wheelchair's got to be super close to the patient, almost touching them. This too far, right? I can't get this patient into that wheelchair. They have to take a step. So in order to do this properly, that wheelchair needs to be way up here, almost touching that patient. You guys see that? But I can't bring that wheelchair way up here, almost touching that patient yet when they're laying in bed, because I got to get them sitting on the edge of the bed. And if the wheelchair is there, if I have a wheelchair, we'll pretend it's open, right up next to the bed, when I try to get their legs out, it's going to tangle up in that wheelchair and somebody's going to get hurt. So we want the wheelchair a little ways away while we pivot the patient to the side of the bed. Once we get them there, we get their shoes on, the gait belt on, then we can bring this wheelchair super close and lock it before the transfer. Okay, does that make sense? Oh, there. Okay. All right. Let's talk about breaks. This is my wheelchair. All right. Bring it here. That's there. Okay. So brakes are very important, and they have to be engaged anytime the wheelchair is not actively in motion. This is like a whole lot of words. Let me explain why. Floors are rarely level. Floors are, in fact, I can put it, there's an area over here that if I put the wheelchair, see how, I'm not touching that wheelchair. Floors are rarely completely level. That means if you have an unlocked wheelchair, it's going to roll. And if there's a body in it, it's going to roll faster because of weight and momentum. And the only thing that's going to stop that wheel from rolling is whatever it runs into. Whatever it runs into. So if you have a wheelchair that is not actively being used in motion, those wheels should be locked. Good? Make sense? So wheelchairs are always kept in the folded position for storage. This just kind of makes them smaller for storage. To open up a wheelchair, you lift up on the handles to get the big wheels off the ground. Just a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit, and you pull it apart. That's how we open a wheelchair. But notice it didn't open all the way. So some wheelchairs, like this one, needs a little help. The other one opens just fine. To open this one all the way, and this happens with age of wheelchairs, you're going to see the older wheelchairs do this a lot. We are going to press down on these two bars until the seat is flat. But I don't want to have my hands in there like this. If I have my hands like this, as that seat spreads, it's going to pinch my fingers. I don't want that. So I'm going to keep my fingers out of the way and open the wheelchair up. To close a wheelchair for storage, we lift up on the seat and the two halves come back together. So there's no levers to pull, no buttons to push. There's no remote control. It's all just brute strength. Okay. I will tell you it's easier to do on a solid floor than a carpet because of friction. So if you're trying to do this on carpet, it's a little bit harder. Keep that in mind. But once we have the wheelchair open, we have to know how to work the brakes. Now these brakes are right here in front of the wheels. Little levers in front of the wheels. And you can see them here. So this is a picture of my other wheelchair. They work different. All your wheelchairs will work a little bit different. These levers here, let me go here. So you see this little bar thing? See how far away from the wheel it is? This bar thing is actually the brake. When we apply the brake, that bar moves forward into the wheel to keep it from rolling. Okay? So see how far away from the wheel it is here? Unlocked. See how it's in the wheel here? Locked. Good. This one, you can see the lever to control that is here. So this wheelchair, that one over there, you pull the lever back to lock it. This wheelchair,
Goes forward.
you push the lever forward to lock it. So each one is going to work a little bit differently. So when you go to the testing center, if you get this skill, they're going to show you how to use the wheelchair at that testing center. They will go over that with you, how it works. So to unlock, we pull the lever back. To unlock this one, we would push the lever forward. Okay. When should a brake be applied?
When it's not actively in motion.
That could be a written test question. And it probably would be written just like that. Wheelchair brakes have to be applied when the wheelchair is not actively in motion. Okay. So concrete floors can shift and crack. We had a shed built not too long ago and had a concrete floor put down for the shed to go up, right? And within like 2 weeks, the thing cracked. So I was online looking up, why did the concrete crack? Is there something wrong? Was it not done right? All that stuff. So I found out from concrete people, that there's only two types of concrete: concrete that has cracked and concrete that hasn't cracked yet. So that tells us in Florida, we're building on sand. It's not hard, compact stone, soil, clay, anything like that. Here, sand. Sand moves, it shifts, which means that with the weight of the building, it's going to crack. Well, when it cracks, it's going to alter the level of the surface, right? So concrete floors, even in hospitals, are likely to have areas where the wheelchair will roll because they're not completely level. Wood floors, even worse, because now you have humidity, which will affect the floor itself. Okay. Whoops. This is sad, but it also explains to you why this skill is graded the way it is. In Florida, one of the largest negligence verdicts occurred after a patient death in 2004. Dementia patient was strapped into a wheelchair with a seatbelt. That's a no-no. That's a restraint. And was able to access a stairway door. So dementia patients should never be able to access a door out of the unit. That means somebody propped the door up open. So we have a dementia patient who is unaware of safety, strapped into a wheelchair, able to access outside of the unit. So 3 points of failure there. Fell down a stairway and died. Now, you could say, oh, did somebody get in trouble for that? My concern did somebody get in trouble for that? To me, that's a given. 3 points of failure. My concern is, oh my gosh, what did that family go through knowing that? Can you imagine? Your very favorite family member. Can you imagine knowing that they could see that stairwell coming closer and closer and closer? Can you imagine tumbling down a concrete stairwell?
With the wheelchair stuck on you.
Yeah. So for me, it's not, did someone get in trouble for that? Yeah, I'm sure they did, but that's not where my mind goes. They made their choice. They'll suffer their consequences. The legal system will take care of that. My mind goes to, oh, that poor family. That poor patient. How horrible is that? So because, and this is the largest negligence verdict in Florida. This is like hundreds of millions of dollars because that's how serious this was. So if we had hundreds of millions of dollars verdict, don't you think that's going to somehow trickle into the test? Right? So should the wheelchair have been locked because it wasn't actively in motion? That patient should not have been strapped into the wheelchair. And that door should never have been left open or accessible. Does that make sense? All of these things are going to play a role in your test. So if the wheelchair is not actively in motion, what does it need to be? Locked. Good? Makes sense? That's just horrible. Horrible. So wheelchair brakes are not a restraint. A lot of people say, well, you can't lock that wheelchair when you walk away from it. It's a restraint. No, it's not. The wheelchair brake is not a restraint.
This is safe.
It is safety, absolutely 100% safety. It's not a restraint because if this patient can go on their own, they can reach down and unlock the wheelchair. It's within reach. They have a way of undoing that easily, the way it's meant to. So it's not a restraint. A competent patient can unlock the wheelchair and go anywhere they want. But an incompetent patient, somebody who has no safety awareness, would not be able to. Okay? Does that make sense? They wouldn't know how. If they're competent, they can unlock it. If they're incompetent, we're keeping that wheelchair from rolling. that make sense? Good. Okay. Very important. Wheelchair brakes are not a restraint. All wheelchairs should be locked when not actively in use. That's what you need to know about that part of this lecture. Let's talk about wheelchair seat height. So this is a wheelchair. This is one of the chairs that you guys are sitting in. Again, these are pictures that I took here. If you look here, you can see how much of a difference there is between this seat height and this seat height. There's a pretty significant difference there. Now, the whole purpose of this is because wheelchairs are designed to make the patient mobile. We want to take the patient somewhere. We don't want their feet flat on the floor. If we're going to push them somewhere, we want their feet up because we need them mobile. Okay, that's important. I'm going somewhere with this. That's important. So wheelchair seats are higher. But this causes a problem. Remember we talked about arteries and veins going down to the legs? Remember that? Right? Well, this is the slide I was trying to find the other day. It's in this lecture. So these arteries bring blood down to the feet, and these veins bring blood back to the heart, arteries and veins. But right here behind the knees, you'll see that these veins all, or these arteries all kind of connect. It's kind of like a hub, right? So highly vascular area right here. It's also very, very, very close to the surface. Not a lot of muscle there at the back of your legs. So this is important, when we have somebody sitting in a chair and their feet aren't flat on the floor, their legs are dangling, which means this seat edge is pressing up into the backs of the knees where all of those blood vessels are. Because we're doing that, we're compressing those veins. And that's not going to let blood go back to the heart very effectively. Does that make sense to you? So that seat, you can see here, that seat is going to compress right there at the backs of the knees. And it's going to squish all of those blood vessels in there. And when it does, it traps blood in the lower part of the legs because it can't go back up. Blood can go down because the heart is pumping, high pressure system. Blood coming back up is more of a trickle. So the blood can't get past that, which means blood gets trapped down here. Look at those legs. This is how we started. Look at those legs. And this is after being in the wheelchair. Look at those legs. What happened? They swelled. This is very common when you have a patient in a wheelchair and their feet aren't supported on anything. All of that blood isn't going to be able to get back up to the heart. So it's going to cause those blood vessels to squish and swelling to occur. Now, the real problem here, that's bad. That's bad. But the real problem here, it gets worse, is this. Anytime blood slows down or stops, excuse me, it clots. Inside our veins, we've got these little valves, okay? So when the heart beats, it kind of pushes blood into the next chamber. The valves close, keeps it there. The heart beats, pushes blood in the next chamber. It's kind of like a ladder that it climbs. These are only in veins. You don't need to know that. You will if you're a nurse. But these valves, though, when we squish those blood vessels, these valves will trap blood. Blood cells that are trapped will clot together. So now we don't just have swelling, we have the potential for blood clots. Blood clots can be deadly to our patients. Are you starting to see the danger here? Remember I said this skill is almost entirely safety? So we don't want the patient sitting in a wheelchair with their legs dangling because it leads to swelling and the potential for blood clots. That's why we use foot pedals. Foot pedals are essential. excuse me, essential. When we put the feet on foot pedals, it supports the feet. It relieves the pressure on the backs of the knees. Blood can then flow. Now we don't have swelling issues. We don't have blood clot issues. So putting the feet on foot pedals is a super important step on the state exam. Super important step. In order to do that, we have to talk about the leg rests and the foot pedals. So if you're looking at this wheelchair, I'm going to lock it in place so it doesn't roll away on me. We have two different pieces to this puzzle. We have leg rests here, and we have foot pedals here. The leg rests kind of free flowing here, but if you get it in the forward position, listen to this. It clicks in place. Now that leg rest is locked. In order to open that leg rest, there's a little catch back here. I just release the catch and it comes forward. So locked in place, released. Okay. We want that leg rest locked in place when the patient is in the wheelchair. We're going to fold that foot pedal down, and that's what's going to support the foot. So here we would lock and fold. Okay. So that way it's supported. But if I've got a wheelchair like this, I can't get a patient into it or out of it because their feet are going to get all tangled up. This is kind of a top-down view so you can see. When a patient is in the wheelchair and it's actively being used, the leg rests are forward and the foot pedals are down to support the feet. When the wheelchair is stored, the leg rests are forward and the foot pedals are up. Now, the reason for that is if we have these leg rests like this where they can just go everywhere, as I'm taking this wheelchair where it needs to go, those leg rests can swing and hit a patient. You want your leg rests to be secured when you're moving this for storage. Okay. So foot pedals up, leg rests forward. During transfers, putting a patient in, taking a patient out, leg rests out and foot pedals up. We want an open area here, but it should only look like this during transfers. When in motion, it should look foot pedals forward, or this is what it looks like in motion here. This is what it looks like during transfers here. And this is what it looks like in use. Okay, good. So there's a lawsuit for this. This happened in Georgia. Let me tell you about this story. You know, this is one of those things that she really thought she was doing the right thing, but it had a bad outcome. So there was a clerical person, unit secretary, non-medical, non-clinical. And there was an older woman who had had some sort of a diagnostic test, an X-ray, an MRI, something like that. And the woman's daughter was pulling the car up to get her mom into the car to go home. And they were waiting for a transporter, somebody to help, and nobody was coming. Well, the daughter has pulled her car up. We got to get this moving. She's blocking traffic. So a clerical person thought that they were doing the right thing. They really did. Heart in the right place. Decided to help the patient in a wheelchair out to the car, but had not been trained on any of this. So when she did that, when she helped the patient out of the wheelchair and into the car, the patient's feet got all tangled up in those foot pedals. And the patient fell. She ended up breaking her leg. Now, I'm sure that the clerical person felt absolutely horrible over this. But should we be doing things that we're not trained to do? And I'm sure in her mind, she thought, well, I know how to use a wheelchair. I mean, I see them every day, all day long. This can't be that hard. I can help the patient out of the bed or out of the wheelchair and into the car, no problem. It's not what we know that gets us in trouble. It's what we think we know that just ain't so. Okay? Mark Twain said that. That's pretty cool. That's what really gets us in trouble in healthcare is sometimes we have a little bit of knowledge, but we don't have the whole picture. We don't have all of the variables. We don't know all of the information. So if we're acting on this much and we're not even aware that all this exists, the potential for injury is there. Bless you. Make sense? So be careful. Don't step outside of your zone because I guarantee you there's something that you don't know that's going to put that patient in jeopardy. I'm sure that she did not anticipate this happening. But it resulted in a lawsuit, and the family got a couple $1 million out of it. I don't know. I don't think that's worth a leg. Personally, I need both of mine.
$1 million?
Yeah, I still need my legs. All right. So when we are transferring from bed to wheelchair, we want to prepare the wheelchair first. We're going to fold those foot pedals up, move the leg rests out of the way. So we'll fold the foot pedals up, move the leg rests out of the way. This is the position the wheelchair needs to be in for transfers. We also want to make sure that once we get it into position, that the wheelchair is locked before the transfer. But before we do that, we got to get the patient sitting on the side of the bed. Now, I'm going to show you how to do this in just a minute. It's not nearly as hard as you think it is, as long as you're using the right technique. I'll show you that in a minute. We'll put the patient's shoes on, make sure their feet are flat on the floor. We're going to bring the wheelchair close, almost touching the patient at a slight angle. And this is when we would lock the wheelchair. So we're going to make sure it's locked. We're going to make sure the gait belt is on and snug. Now, you can put the gait belt on before you bring the wheelchair over or after. Nobody cares. However you want to do it. And we're going to brace the patient's feet with our foot, just like we did with Ambulate when we stood them up. We'll use proper body mechanics. And we'll pivot the patient smoothly without them taking a step. Remember, our care plan says they can't. But before we sit them down, we need to make sure that they can feel that chair behind them. Now, he's big. He's a foot taller than I am. If I'm going to pick him up and pivot him around, I don't want to be standing there holding him saying, hey, can you feel that chair behind you? That's a long time. So before I ever pick him up, I say, I'm going to lift you and pivot you. When you feel that chair behind you, I want you to say sit. Okay? So before I lift, remember, when you feel the chair behind you, say sit. So I lift, pivot, he says sit, down we go. Prepare your patients. It takes less work for you. Then we'll position those feet on the foot pedals. We're going to make sure the wheelchair is facing forward. Remember, not a wall. And then we'll lock it in position. We can remove the gait belt and make sure they're positioned properly with their hips at the back of the wheelchair. They're not falling off. Make sure they look right. And then do our closing. Okay. Good. Questions? Questions? All right. Oops. That's why you don't have those things. Did you hear it hit? If those leg rests are free, they're going to hit something. Okay, so let me show you this skill. You're a camera operator. All right. So can I ask you? Come on over. I need you to take your shoes off and just leave them on the side of the bed and then lay down in the bed for me, please. All right, here we go. Now I will simulate hand washing for the sake of time. Hi, Miss Jones. My name is Patty. I'm your CNA today. How are you? You feel like getting out of bed and into the wheelchair today? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close your curtain and go wash my hands, and I'll be right back. I have washed my hands. So I'm going to get the gait belt. My wheelchair is already in the area. But I'm going to bring it so it's a little bit more in reach. Because once I get that patient sitting on the side of the bed, I don't want to have to leave her to go get the wheelchair. Oops. All right, so I've got it within reach. Now I need to get her pivoted around so she's sitting on the edge of the bed. And everybody thinks this is hard. It's actually not as hard as you think it's going to be if you do it right. So can you scoot your whole body closer to me? Very good. Okay, I'll do all the work. Now I'm going to stand shoulder width apart. I want to make sure the bed is not unlocked. It's got to be locked. It's got to be stable, right? Because I'm actually going to lean against this bed for leverage. So I'm going to get close to the bed, shoulder width apart, like this. This arm is going to go underneath the shoulders. Everybody figures that out. That's not that's a no-brainer, right? This arm goes under the shoulders. This is the one that everybody messes up. It does not go under the legs. We're not doing a honeymoon carry here. It goes over the legs. When you go under the shoulders, and the furthest shoulder should be in the palm of my hand. So not a little bit, under the shoulders. This arm over the knees, it's just a pivot. Super easy to move people that way. All right, so to keep her arms from being in my way, I'm going to ask her, can you cross your arms over your chest, please? And relax. I'll do all the work, okay? Okay, so shoulder width apart, leaning against the bed for leverage. This arm is going to go underneath all the way across, and this one over the knees. Relax. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Good. Are you dizzy?
No.
Okay. Go ahead and relax. And let me help you put your shoes on. There we go. And are your feet flat on the floor?
Mhm.
Good. Okay, I'm going to put this gait belt on, and this is going to help me lift you into the wheelchair, okay? Want to make sure it's not twisted. We're going to put it through the first guard by the alligator teeth. Want it snug, 4 fingers. Lock it into the second guard. And we'll just tuck that out of her way. Now she's ready for transfer. Now I have to get my wheelchair ready for transfer. So I'm going to bring that close. And when I say close, I mean close. Do you see how close that is? And I'm going to lock it in place. All right. There we go. Can you bring your feet closer together? There we go. All right. You're going to put your hands on my shoulders, and on the count of 3, I'm going to lift you up and pivot you around. Okay. Mm-hmm. When you feel that chair behind you, behind your knees, I want you to say sit. All right. So put your hands up here. And remember, when you feel that chair, say sit. Mm-hmm. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Sit. Now we can remove the gait belt. Go ahead and lift your arms up for me. All right. I'm going to unlock the wheelchair because we can't leave her facing a wall. Lift your feet up for me. And round we go. Okay. Lock that in place. And I'm going to lift your foot and place it on the foot pedal. We'll lock the wheelchair. I'm going to lift your foot and place it on the foot pedal. Good. Are you comfortable? Mm-hmm. Would you like a magazine before I go?
No. Okay.
Okay. Call light is right here. Can you reach that?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Very good. If you have anything that you need, just use call light to let me know. I'm going to go ahead and wash my hands and leave. Okay. Environment is clean. Everything looks good. I'm going to open the curtain. Put that away. Wash my hands. Think about steps of my skill. Make any corrections. My skill is done. Let's go ahead and lift your foot up. Let me get these out of the way so you can get out of the wheelchair. Okay, there you go. All right. Any questions? Any questions on that? It did not take 11 minutes.
So we're gonna lock the lock one by one, or can we lock it?
You can do them both at the same time if you want to. Yeah. Just you have to kind of be careful about your body mechanics because for me, I'm kind of smaller. I got short arms. When I try to do that, I might put my torso like right in the patient's face. So I do them one at a time. If you've got longer arms, that could be just fine. I just try to keep myself out of their personal space. I've actually been bit one too many times. It's a whole story. All right. So let's go ahead and take our break and come back at a quarter till. Come back at a quarter till. I'll give you an extra 2 minutes. Come back at a quarter till. Oh, that's fine. That's fine. I should be done with instructions somewhere in there because you'll have about an hour of practice time today. So that's fine. Leave whenever you need to.
Okay. One more question. When we finish the class, we can't do that with the, or we have to wait for the license.
Some places you'll be able to work. Others will need your certification first. We're going to talk about that on the last class.
Okay. Because I tried to make it to the application twice, one time, but this one, for some reason, this one won't show. But I called it from it, and then they find me London with my date of birth. No, with my social security, but I don't get anything.
You didn't get a confirmation
No,
code?
that's why I called.
Okay, you'll probably need to do it again. They didn't take the money out of your account.
I know.
Okay, then yeah, if they don't have a record of it, it means it's somewhere in there. And there is it happens a lot because there's one little area that everybody misses. And if you don't check a box there, it will, it won't submit your application. So let me show you. All right, so right here, right here, where it says supporting document. We don't have this on the paper application, it's only on the online application. If you don't check one of those boxes, you can hit submit and it won't submit.
So if you missed this,
I'm gonna double check.
yeah, if you missed that, that's what's holding it up.
Because these look like grease. Probably we think I grease, we don't have to fill it out this.
Yeah, yeah, this gets missed a lot.
I'm not ready yet.
What kind of
I
one?
would
The
say
same
I
one
will
or
go-
no?
I will go-
You get either, you can,
Put it in.
what that's asking is
Right.
if we need more information from you, how are you gonna send it to us? By
So
mail
us
or
to
by
be-
fax? So it doesn't matter which one you
register
do.
ourselves. Whenever.
Okay, I think I missed
Also, my
this
record
before, and my I think we send it by email
What's it-
or
Cause
by
I have to
fax.
save up money.
Okay, yeah, it
Right.
it
The
doesn't
purpose
matter
of
which,
this
you
is
just have to check a
We're
box.
gonna
So
do
we have to check.
Yeah.
they're gonna do
Okay,
the
I'm gonna try
background
that.
check. And
Thank
they're
you.
gonna give
You're
us the
welcome.
date for when we do the test and scale, right?
That would be so scared. I would be like anxiety because you're like, oh no. Gotta practice the skills.
How do we do that?
Yeah, but they said, I was gonna talk to the person there. Yeah. I talked to the agent. And then she said, "No, I'm waiting for the so we're like, because I don't plan, wants to be here. And then she said, I don't think so. She's the city person. And then, yeah, I did. So she might come in. Cause I heard, hey, honey, I noticed you had you had a girlfriend work there. And she said that nobody would know. I know, but I wasn't sure what to say. She, yeah, the girl, her boyfriend said that she called and she couldn't get along. So I was like, talking to her, cause I told him I think I could get a dog house. And I was looking up something that happened here. He was like, oh my girlfriend is quite from here. Cause I heard you say that. Exactly. It's just one person believe one nurse who quit as a nurse, but we can have she's all alone. She said, and very relaxed compared to a nurse. She's already still so she decided to stay. She said she has I don't know if the new one would like her. I don't think so. But if she would quit, I said, she's like that restricted. But she was definitely do what she said, like everything she said. She's, I know notice her. She's like, she's like, for example, hey, you can bring a cake tomorrow, okay? You're like, why do you bring a cake? Why should I, because we need to communicate with the residents and you need, do you bake? You need to bake, like that. That's why this is too much. I know. So, you know what, last month, so there was a birthday on the residents. And I am RA, resident A, I'm not activity. And she said, hey, that's his comments. Can I have a favor? And then my partner, sure. And then I didn't because everyone may have this appointment, so I just keep quiet. Please guys, I want to have more of the balloons to blow because there's a party. And I was like, I just pretend to watch but my coworker is new, so yeah, sure, why not? So she was blowing the balloons, and then it's already dinner time. So when you say dinner time, we need to get all the residents on their room. And then I said, hey girls, let's start now. And she was like, balloons. So she explained, hey, it's dinner time and I need to help clean. And then she said, you know what she said? We're not yet done. And I'm hearing like, hey, this is her job. This is your activity's job. You're not a job. She's supposed to do that anyway.
Thank you.
She already had it. She had a birthday. She would do that before she left. So I've never brought cake. Everybody's already had it. So because she was very
All right. So we're going to move on to another skill now. We're going to learn feed a resident who's in a chair. This is our next skill. We know all of the principles involved. So what we need to focus on here is the skill-specific steps. If you look down here at the test-specific information, you'll see you'll have 9 minutes to do this skill. You're going to be doing it on a real live person, which means that you guys, for the test, might be fed by another person. That person will be in a chair. Charting is required for this. Sorry, guys. I'm going to sit today. My knee hurts. Let me just sit for a minute here. I'll have to get up for another one, but let me sit for a minute. All right. So if you look at page 109, you can see the care plan at the top of the page. Care plan tells us to feed a resident a snack who is unable to feed himself or herself. The resident is sitting in a chair in an inappropriate position for eating. I want you to underline that or highlight it where it says an inappropriate position. In most cases, your care plan out there in a clinical setting is not going to tell you this. This is something that you have to visually assess for yourselves. Are they sitting up straight? Are they in a good position for eating? But for the test, remember one of you guys might be the patient. And the evaluator is going to tell you to slouch or slump. Now, for some of you, that means you're going to do this. Anybody ever see a 12-year-old? Anybody know a 12-year-old? 12-year-olds eat like this all the time. So in your mind, this might not be inappropriate if you're used to being around 12-year-olds. So the care plan for the test is telling us, no matter what your eyes are telling you, is this patient in an appropriate position? So we need to be aware of that, okay? for the test, I don't care what your eyes say about how the patient looks. We're going to ask them, can you please sit up straight? Okay, good. Questions? All right. It also tells us document intake on food and fluid intake form. You can see a sample of that there on the side of page 109. And in your book, on page 168 and 169, you will see sample documentation forms. These are the forms that are used by the state exam. So to kind of get you used to it. It's the same one that you see there.
169.
But these are sample forms that you can play with. You can use to play with. Okay. Now I want to bring your attention to the care plan one more time. It says feed the resident a snack. So our care plan is telling us we're just giving them a snack. We're not doing a full meal here, just a snack. So for the test, a snack is going to be a single serve pudding or applesauce cup. That's what they'll be feeding somebody. A single serve pudding cup or applesauce cup. That's what we're going to be feeding. But feeding doesn't follow all of our normal rules. Feeding is actually a little bit different than the rest of the skills we do. It's the only skill where we don't use a barrier because our food tray is our barrier. We don't need a barrier on the table. It's the only skill that we don't close the privacy curtain for. And that's because eating is social. People gather in groups to eat. They have conversations when they eat. Sure, you're not talking with your mouth full. But if you go over to Cody's after class today, buy one, get one free fajitas on Wednesdays. Awesome. And you walk in there, it's going to be pretty busy because BOGO, right? So let's say you walk in there and there's about 60 people sitting there and it's dead silent. Not a single voice to be heard. How awkward would that feel? You walk into a restaurant with lots of people in it and it's totally quiet. Feel awkward, wouldn't it? Feel a little creepy. We talk while we eat. You're not talking with your mouth full. You would talk while somebody else takes a bite. And then when they're done with a bite, you take a bite and they talk. This is how talking or socialization during eating occurs. But socialization is a very important part of eating.
That's the best part about sign language. As you're eating, you got a mouthful.
You can still sign. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And socialization is important when it comes to feeding. If we don't have socialization, your patient isn't going to eat very well. And that's going to affect their energy levels, which can affect their performance tomorrow. I mean, this is like a whole big picture, right? So we have to engage in socialization. In fact, it's the only skill that you're graded on having a conversation with the patient. It's the only skill that you're graded on having a conversation because socialization is that important. Now, during COVID, we found this out. During COVID, we closed all assisted living facilities and nursing homes to outsiders. Families could not come visit. Friends could not come visit. Patients had to eat in their rooms alone. And what they found was a extremely distressing weight loss across the board. Socialization is a huge component of eating. And you guys already know this. You just may not know that you know it, right? So all of your major milestones in life all revolve around food. Birthday parties, what do they serve? Food. Baby showers, what do they serve? Food. Weddings, what do they serve? Food. Funerals, what do they serve? Food. Backyard get-togethers. What's always there? Food. Anniversaries. Food, right? So food is a really big part of your social experience. But socialization is a really big part of your food experience. They're intertwined. Does that make sense? We need to be aware of that. So, because of this, we don't close the privacy curtain during the test when we're feeding a patient. We don't close the privacy curtain in a clinical setting when we're feeding a patient unless our care plan says otherwise. Because when you close the curtain, it blocks the patient off, it isolates them, and they won't eat well. They'll take a couple bites and say, no, I'm done. I'm good. Make sense? Now, when you're doing this for the test and when you're practicing at home on loved ones, this is kind of a fun skill that you can kind of play around with. And we really don't think about the emotional impact on the patient, but I want to talk about that for a second. This is actually the hardest skill to be a patient for in real life. When you legitimately cannot feed yourself and you have to rely on somebody else to do that for you, it affects you psychologically in a way that no other skill does. And that's for a couple of reasons. Number one, food is essential to life. We all know it. If you don't eat, you die, which means you are now at the complete mercy of another human. I want you to think about that for a second. You are at the complete mercy of another human being. That's a scary, scary place to be as an adult. If they decide not to feed you, you will die. You don't get to pick your caregivers. Imagine how scary that is. Now, the other reason that this is important is that eating is the very first skill you become independent at. You learn how to hold your bottle long before you even know what hungry is. You learn how to pick up Cheerios and diced peaches off a high chair tray and get them to your mouth long before you walk, crawl, stand. The first skill we master, feeding ourselves. So when you are unable to feed yourselves, it affects you psychologically in a very big way. Patients that can't feed themselves are often extremely depressed. They require a lot of encouragement. They feel like they're an imposition. A lot of them will say, I don't even know why I'm still alive. This affects them. Being able to feed yourself is an essential part of being human. You need to understand that because how we approach this is going to have a really big impact on your patient. If you approach this with, oh my gosh, I got to feed you again. Come on, come on, come on. Let's go. Hurry up, hurry up. I got other people to feed. Let's go. Your patient is not going to eat. They're already disadvantaged. They're already psychologically impaired because of their dependence. Does that make sense? If you sit down, pull up a chair, sit down, have a conversation with them, feed them slowly, make them feel that you want to be there, they will eat much better. So how you approach this skill is graded on the state exam. You guys understand that? Very, very important. So it's different because we don't use a barrier. The food tray is the barrier. We don't close the curtain because we don't want to isolate the patient. It's the only skill where we have to sit because you don't want to stand over somebody and feed them. That puts them in a dependent position, makes them feel rushed. And we have to have a conversation. Doesn't have to be a real one. You can make something up. It's fine. But you have to have a conversation of some kind. So they're showing a movie on the big screen in the activity room later today. Would you like to go? I think it's Casablanca or something like that. Or Hey, the bingo jackpot's up to $2.10, and Martha thinks she's going to win this week. What do you think? Did you see the little kids coming to the lobby for Easter in their little Easter dresses? Oh, they were adorable. Did you see that? That was adorable. I don't care what you talk about. Make something up, but you've got to have a conversation. Make sense? You're graded on it. Now, in a clinical setting, when I'm working with real patients, I have a couple of conversation starters that I use. And one of the starters, my favorite one, is what's the most exciting place you've ever been? Because most people have been to more than one place in their life. So it gives us a couple of opportunities for talking, right? But sometimes your patients will surprise you. Like I was working with this one lady. She was in her 90s in an assisted living facility, very, very sharp. But she had these really, really extensive wounds on her legs because of venous insufficiency. And I had to go do wound care. And this is a very, very involved wound care process. About 45 minutes it was going to take me to do these dressings. So I pull up a chair and I start unwrapping her legs. And I said, so we'll call her Millie. So, Miss Millie, what's the most exciting place you've ever been? And she says, oh, honey, I've never been anywhere. I said, now, Miss Millie, this is up in Citrus County, little old Citrus County, right? Now, Miss Millie, you had to have gone somewhere. We're in Citrus County after all. So, have you gone anywhere in Florida? No, I've never left the county. What? You've never left Citrus County? And she says, well, it's not entirely true. I was born in Brooksville, but I don't remember that. You've been in this county right here every day of your life for 90 something years. She says, yeah. Oh my. Now I'm settling in because this is amazing. This is living history right in front of me. Almost 100 years of history in front of me. What changes have you seen in this county, Miss Millie? How has this changed? What was it like growing up? This is amazing. And she talked. I wasn't there for 45 minutes. I was there for over an hour. And I learned all about the two families in Inverness. And the boy was supposed to marry the girl, and the girl ran off with another guy, and it was a whole thing. And she remembers when the first McDonald's came in. The first McDonald's. She remembers when the courthouse was moved. She remembers when the road got paved. Like the main road got paved. Oh my gosh. How exciting. So sometimes your patients will lead you on a conversation that you didn't even know you were going to have, but you can learn all kinds of things. So ask questions. People generally want to talk, and they want to talk about their lives and their experiences. But another thing that you can do is look in their environment for clues about things that they're willing to talk about. My deepest, darkest secrets, not on my walls. Guarantee you. If I've got a picture up, it's one that I'm willing to talk about. You see my picture over there, my husband and I on a cruise. One of my favorite pictures. I'm willing to talk about it. Ask me about cruising. I'll talk to you about it. That is not a deep, dark secret. I have it displayed. People will display things they are willing to talk about. So look around the environment. See if there's something. That's a beautiful picture frame. Where did that come from? It looks custom. It looks handmade. Where? Oh yeah, that was made by so. They've got a story behind it. But I always look for, especially these women that are in their 70s, 80s, probably more 80s, 90s now because life is going by. But I always look for a picture of them as young women with their young man. Okay. So who usually go on to be their husbands. So I usually, if I find, and most of the time you'll find a black and white photo, and the man is always in service uniform. The woman always looks amazing. These women, they put us to shame. Man, they knew how to put themselves together. Amazing. I'll point to the picture and I'll say, oh my gosh, they're gorgeous. Were they movie stars or something? And watch her sit up a little straighter. Oh no, honey, that's me. It didn't cost me anything to make her day. And she'll eat better now because I put her in a better frame of mind. But I want to know all about that picture. Where were you when it was taken? How'd you meet him? What was it like? And let her relive those memories. That's a good thing. Have you ever stopped to think about why you create memories? Why do you remember things? Why do you remember feelings and experiences? Do you know why? Because our culture is based on an oral history. We share our experiences with others verbally. And that's why you create memories. So how horrible would it be to get to the end of your life and have all of these experiences and feelings and have absolutely nobody willing to listen? How horrible would that be? You'd start to feel like your life was meaningless. It was worth nothing because nobody wants to hear about it. Be the person that wants to hear about it. You'll probably pick up a thing or two along the way, I guarantee it. I met a man that was knighted by the Queen of England. A real life knight. How amazing. I also met a man who was one of the engineers in the Apollo mission, where we put a man on the moon. Amazing stories. Every one of these people has a life, and when you're feeding them, it's the one time that you can slow down and have those conversations. Good? Make sense? Really important. So our checkpoints here, we have to make sure the patient is sitting upright for feeding. That's an important checkpoint because we don't want to choke them. We're going to offer them a hand wipe before we start feeding them. Yeah, we're doing the feeding. Yes, I get it. But just because we're doing the feeding doesn't mean the patient is immobile. Their hand may come up to wipe a drop away or to push food in. We don't want dirty hands up near the mouth when we're feeding them. So we want to give them a hand wipe before we feed them. But it also goes along with, keep that up. It also goes along with ritual. Most people wash their hands before they eat. So if you wash your hands before you eat, when somebody else is feeding you, that part of the ritual needs to be maintained so that the patient feels like they're maintaining some sense of continuity, normalcy. Okay. So Yuma asks, what about a patient whose intake and output is to be documented? Must I see with them also? We're going to get to documentation in just a minute. So hold that question for a second. And I'm probably going to answer it when it comes to intake and output. We're going to get there in just a second. Blessed said, good morning, Patty. I did my state board exam yesterday and I was successful because of your class. I did pretty well. Thank you very much for giving those online classes. So congratulations. Great job. We're so proud of you. That's amazing. All right. So we're going to offer a hand wipe. We're also going to offer a clothing protector. We're not going to force it on them, but we do want to offer. Would you like a cloth? We never call it a bib, ever. They're not children. This is not a bib. This is a clothing protector. Now, my grandmother, she's very prim and proper. Very. Everything had to be just so. If I had offered her a clothing, or if I had put a clothing, I can offer, but if I put a clothing protector on her, I would get a half-hour lecture about how she is not a child and this is demeaning. And yeah, we're not going there. We're going to offer it, but we're going to let her have the final say. Now, me, I drop everything on me. Everything. If I'm eating it, you can guarantee I'm going to wear it. So for me, yeah, clothing protector, please. Okay. So everybody's going to handle this a little bit different. We will offer, but we don't force. We are going to sit while we feed the patient. This helps make us equals. It also helps slow me down as well. And it's a good position to have a conversation. We're going to offer a drink before feeding and every 2 or 3 bites. Now, I do want to stop here for a second and point out something that you may or may not be familiar with. Everybody eats differently. Everybody. My aunt growing up had been a model years and years ago, and she picked this up back then. But every time she went to eat a meal, she always drank an entire glass of water before she ate. Always. She would not eat anything if she did not drink a whole glass of water first. And she swore that what it did was filled up her stomach, so she ate less. And that's how she kept her figure. And it was something that she learned a million years ago. Doesn't work for me. Tried it, doesn't work. Other people drink with a meal. That's me. I don't have a lot of saliva, so I have to take a bite and take a drink, because that's how I eat. So I drink a lot with my meals. And then there's some people that don't drink at all while they're eating. They drink after. That's my husband. He'll drink after the meal. So everybody handles this a little bit differently. Don't assume that the way you eat is the way your patient eats. But this isn't just with liquids, it's also with food. So how many of you guys don't like your foods to touch on your plates? Do I have anybody in here? I usually have one. So there are people that don't like their foods to touch on their plate. They need them separated. Some people eat all of one thing before they go on to the next thing. That's my husband. He does that. Some people like their corn and mashed potatoes mixed. Other people, don't you dare. Some people eat salad first before the meal. That's pretty popular in our culture, but there's other cultures where you eat salad last because it helps with digestion. So just because you eat a certain way doesn't mean your patient eats that way. So we want to take our cues from them. What do you want first? What would you like next? How would you like me to help you? Remember, help isn't help if it doesn't help. Right? Make sense? Let me tell you a story about this too. Sometimes we puree foods. Pureed means that we grind them up so that the patient doesn't have to chew. Okay. This doesn't alter the flavor. It just alters the texture. So it's important that you understand that. But years ago, I was working hospice and I went into a nursing home where I saw patients. And I had a patient who had had a stroke. She also had cancer. She had a lot going on. She was nonverbal, couldn't really speak. Okay. But she had a very expressive face. She was definitely with it. Very expressive face. And she got she was really good about relaying how she felt about things without using words. Okay. So I went in, and we're going to call her Miss Mary. I went in, it was lunchtime. I go down to the dining room, and there's a CNA sitting at a table with 3 patients. One of them is Miss Mary. And I pulled up a chair. I said, "Hey, Miss Mary, how are you doing today?" And she kind of rolled her eyes up and turned her head. And so that's telling me she's not having a great day. So I look down, and she's got a plate of food in front of her that's this big glop of gray goo. Okay, just a big gray thing. And I'm like, "Oh, Miss Mary, what are you eating?" And she turned her head even further away to let me know she didn't like it either. So I asked the CNA, "Hey, what's for lunch today?" She says, "Oh, I think they're serving like Salisbury steak and mashed potatoes and beets or something like that." And I said, "Okay, but what is that?" She says, "Well, the Salisbury steak, the mashed potatoes, and the beets." Would you eat Salisbury steak, mashed potatoes, and beets all mixed together? She says, no, that's disgusting. So why did you do it to her? Oh, no, that's pureed food. It doesn't taste like anything. She doesn't know. Okay, she clearly does. She has told me without using words that she does not like what you're serving. How come you didn't listen to her? Oh, well, she's old. That's not how we treat patients. So I said, go get her a new tray. I'll feed her. Go get her a new tray. This does not work. I said, puree does not mean no taste. It just means the texture is different. They don't have to chew it. She says, oh, really? Because I mix everything puree. And all I'm thinking is, oh my gosh, somewhere along the line, there's been some salmon and Brussels sprouts that were mixed. How gross is that? Right? So we've got to be careful about the things that we think we know that maybe aren't true. Okay. Good? Makes sense? Ugh. Beets should not be mixed with anything, guys, please. We're going to feed slowly, giving small bites. The spoon should only be half full, not full, half full. So for the test, let's say you're the patient, okay? The evaluator is going to have you sit in a chair, a table in front of you. You're going to be told to slouch or slump. So what you're doing there is fine. And you are going to have to feed her. But when I'm talking to you, the other evaluator is giving you your instructions, but I'm going to talk to you as the patient. I need you to take only 4 bites. And then no matter what she says, I want you to say, no, thank you. I'm full. I don't want any more. Just decline anything further. Okay. So 4 bites is all you're going to take. You guys get that? That's the instruction your patient is going to get for the state exam. They're only going to take 4 bites. So we have a snack, single serve pudding cup or applesauce cup. We have a patient that's only going to take 4 bites, and the spoon should only be half full. So we're not feeding a whole lot here. Okay. And if you looked at the bottom of the page, I forget what page that is, we've got 9 minutes to get this done. 4 half bites. 9 minutes to get it done. Don't rush this skill. You've got plenty of time. Okay. Small bites. We're going to have a conversation. It doesn't need to be real. We're going to encourage intake once the patient says, I don't want any more. Now, you can always get a lot further with patients by being nice than being mean. So I'm going to ask, are you sure you don't want just one more bite? Because maybe they think that they need to free me up to go take care of somebody else. Patients do that. So I want to make sure that they know that I want to be there. So are you sure you don't want just one more bite? Now, I use 3 forms of encouragement. You need to use 2. So you can pick any of these out of the 3. You can pick 2. So are you sure you don't want just one more bite? The second thing I'll ask is, would you like something else from the kitchen? Because we've all had those days where something sounds good, you make it, you eat it, have a bite, and you're like, nope, not it, not what I was looking for, not what I wanted. Maybe the patient's having that same issue. So I'll ask them, do you want me to get you something else? The third thing I'll do is tell them, if you get hungry later, let me know. We have some snacks available on the unit if you get hungry. That way that they know that their nutrition is important to us, that they're not just a job, they're a human. Okay? You need to use 2 on the state exam. You sure you wouldn't like just one more bite? Can I get you something else? Let me know if you get hungry later. Okay? After we've encouraged, then we're going to wipe off their mouth with that towel. Remember, the mouth always needs to be clean and dry at the end. And we will document. So we always have to do our closing before we document. And then after we document, we're going to wash our hands. So this is a food and fluid intake form. You'll see on this form that it's got 2 check boxes, a snack or a meal. Which one are we going to check for the test? A snack, because the care plan told us snack. And then we're going to estimate how much food they ate. This is on what we call a quarter scale. We're also going to estimate how much they drank. Remember, we're going to offer a drink before and every 2 or 3 bites. So we're going to use something called a quarter scale. A quarter scale goes like this. If they ate absolutely everything or drank absolutely everything, it's 100%. 100% is all. If they ate absolutely nothing, that's 0. Everything else in between is a judgment call. If they ate most of it, but not all, that's 75. If they ate about half, that's 50. If they picked at it, just ate a couple of bites, that's 25. Okay, this is a quarter scale. Same thing with fluids. If they drank everything, cup is dry, 100%. If they drank nothing, 0%. If they drank some, 25. If they drank half, 50. If they drank most, 75. Make sense? Good. You're going to estimate. So we're going to get into documentation in a minute. I've got an activity to do with you, but just to recap here, we're going to make sure that we offer a hand wipe and a clothing protector. We're going to offer a drink before feeding and every 2 to 3 bites. We're going to let them lead. We're going to feed slow, the spoon only half full, and no childlike feeding techniques. No planes, trains, or automobiles. These are adults.
What if you said, for example, the evaluator will say for spoon only, right?
Right.
So what that is 50% or?
Well, we're only filling the spoon half full.
Yeah.
So really, it's probably going to be about 25% for the test. Yeah. Yeah. So when you get a pudding cup, if you're only filling the spoon half full, you look at what's there, what's left, and you'll see that it's probably just this much out of the cup. So about 25%. Okay. All right. So if you look at the top image there, let me get up. If you look at the top image here, you'll see that this person has a sandwich, some broccoli, some Jell-O, and a drink. Okay. This is what we start with. When we go to pick up the plate, this is what we pick up, right? They took a couple bites of the sandwich. They ate a bite of the broccoli, a couple bites of Jell-O, but most of it's still there. How much would you estimate they ate based on this plate? 25%. So later on, they get the same plate. This is what we pick up. About half the sandwich is gone. About half the broccoli is gone. About half of the Jell-O is gone. How much did they eat? Okay. So we pick up this plate. We got a stalk of broccoli, some crust, and a couple pieces of Jell-O. How much did they eat? 75. Now, this is a little misleading because I told you if they eat everything, it's 100%. Well, the stalk, that doesn't really count. Okay. A couple of cubes of Jell-O doesn't really count. So a bite left, you can give them credit for 100. Do you see there's a big difference kind of between these two? Right? So this, we can give them credit for 100. Good? Make sense? Because there is no, let me go back there. Notice there is no 90% on that scale. So we have to go with what we have. It's closer to 100% than it is to 75. All right, so now let's talk about fluid intake. And this is going to help cover what you were asking earlier. So when we have fluids that are in cups or single serve, like juice boxes or something like that, we have to calculate how much fluid the patient took in. The way that we do that is if they're measured in ounces, we have to convert that to cc's because in medicine, everything is measured using the metric system. So cc's, which stands for cubic centimeters, and mLs, which stands for milliliters, is the same thing. Remember in healthcare, why stop at one name when we can have 2, right? So same thing. So cc's and mLs, exactly the same thing. Okay, good? Make sense? All right. So if we're documenting in cc's, but we're measuring in ounces, that means we have to do a conversion. So this is not going to tell us how many cc's are in that cup, but we know it's a 6-ounce cup. So if it's a 6-ounce cup and they drank 6 ounces of fluid, we would multiply 6 ounces by 30 cc's and get 180. Okay. If it's an 8-ounce cup, we would multiply 8 ounces by 30 cc's and get 240. That's right. So when you go to work, wherever you go to work, they will have standard size cups. And this is going to be part of your orientation. They're going to tell you our water cup here is 4 ounces. Our coffee cup here is 6 ounces. Our juice cup here is 8 ounces, whatever the case may be. They're going to give you those, what they call normal measurement sizes. Good. You are going to have a math question on the written state exam. Most of the time, it'll be a conversion like this. But sometimes it'll be an addition problem. Okay, Levon says, when I feed my mom, she pointed out to me that I need to put the spoon straight into her mouth and not sideways. Oh, very good point, Levon. I'm glad you brought that up. So when we're feeding ourselves, you have to think about the way you eat, right? You probably don't slide the spoon in like this. You get food on the spoon and you bring it a little bit more forward. We want to do the same thing to our patient. Remember not to put the spoon sideways to their mouth. You want to feed them the way that you would want to eat, right? The spoon needs to be a little bit more straight. Good point. So if you go to page 106, we have a whole documentation exercise here. And you can do this one on your own. Let's look at this one here. Okay, so if this is what we started with, and man, that looks good. We've got a steak, we got some broccoli, we got a potato, and we got a pudding cup. That's what we're starting with. When we go to pick it up, we get this back. So looking at that, comparing it to the first, the whole plate, how much would you anticipate that person ate?
50%.
About 50%. What about number 6? About 25%. They kind of picked at it. What about number 7? 0. That's a crime. They refuse that steak, and I'll take it. Right? They refuse the steak and baked potato. Do you think that we might want to report that to the nurse that the patient is not eating?
Yes.
Okay. And what about number 5 or number 8? Yeah, that would be mine. Steak looks good. All right. So that's how you would estimate. I also, in the online course, have a whole lesson on this. And it has you documenting how much intake the patient had. So if you're struggling with this at all, the online course lesson will help you with this because you're doing it. Okay, it puts into practice what you're learning. But down here, we want to talk about intake and fluid conversions. So remember, 1 ounce is worth 30 cc's or mLs. So if you look at this cup, it tells you it's 6 ounces of juice. How many mLs would that be? 180. So write 180 in there. Now the next one is a little special. If you look at that milk carton closely, you'll actually see that it has the mLs on it. So how many mLs? It's telling us. We should believe it. So we don't have to do that conversion. Pre-packaged foods will have mLs already on them. So if you look at that Pepsi bottle right there, it'll tell you how many ounces it is. So how many ounces is that Pepsi bottle? If you look at the label. Can I borrow your Pepsi bottle for a minute? Okay. So this is 20 ounces. It tells us 20 ounces. But just below that, it tells us it's 591 mLs. Now, we could multiply 20 ounces by 30 cc's and get 600. Or we can use the label and it's telling us 591. Which one is more accurate? The label, sure, absolutely. So pre-packaged foods will have, or fluids, will have the mLs printed directly on it. That's what we would use. So this milk carton tells us it's 240. So write 240 there. 12 ounces of coffee, man, that is a big coffee cup, by the way. I probably need that. 12 ounces of coffee. If we multiplied 12 by 30, we would get 360. So this is how you convert. Okay, you multiply the amount of ounces by 30 to get your ml reading. Any questions on that? But that's only half of the process, because most of the time, if we're keeping track of fluids, it means the patient is on intake and output readings. So what that means is we are going to track everything that goes into the patient and everything that comes out of the patient as far as fluid goes. And they should be roughly equal, within 100 or so mLs. If we are keeping track and the patient took in 1,200 mLs this shift, but only gave me back 600 in urine, well, where's the other 600? That's a problem, because it's got to go somewhere. So now we're looking at the feet. Are they swollen? Right? We're listening to the lungs. Are they gurgling? That fluid went somewhere. It didn't come out. So that tells us there's a problem. On the other side, if we took in 1,200 cc's or mLs, but we peed out 2,000, where did that fluid come from? Are we getting dehydrated? Make sense? So some of your patients will require that we keep track of all fluid in and all fluid out, and that is called intake and output. Always done in mLs or cc's, always. So if we've got 6 ounces of juice, 8 ounces of milk, and 12 ounces of coffee, which we converted into 180 cc's, 240 cc's, 360 cc's. At the end of the shift, we have to add all of that together to figure out how much this patient actually drank this shift. So if you can add together 180, 240, and 360, what do you get? 780. So the total intake for this patient on this shift is 780. You will have a math question on the state exam. It will either be a conversion. They'll tell you patient had 12 ounces of soda. How many cc's is that? Or it'll say the patient took in 180 cc's of juice, 240 of milk, 360 of coffee. What was the total intake for the shift? You would add those together. Good? Questions? All right, let's go to page 132. 132 is a list of medical abbreviations. These are things that are commonly used, bless you, for CNAs. So page 132. Anything that is shaded in gray, you need to know for the state exam. So there's a lot of abbreviations here, a lot, but the ones that I really want you to focus on are the ones shaded in gray. So PRN, and this really messes students up a lot, because PRN means as needed. So how in the world does PRN, those initials, mean as needed? I mean, what words do they go with? That doesn't make any sense. How do you get as needed out of that? Well, we have to understand that this is English, what it means as needed. This is not. PRN is abbreviated Latin because Latin is the language of medicine. It's actually the language of science in general, but specifically to us, it's the language of medicine. So PRN doesn't mean, it's not abbreviated English words. It doesn't mean anything in English. It's only when we convert it to English does it mean as needed. So if I tell you bathroom privileges PRN, that means they go to the bathroom whenever they want to, when they need to. You guys are all bathroom privileges PRN. You take care of that yourself when you need to. I'm not involved. Yay. Stat, also abbreviated Latin. And it means right now, immediately. BID, abbreviated Latin. B stands for bi. How many wheels does a bicycle have? 2. So BID is 2 times a day or twice a day. TID, T stands for tri. How many wheels does a tricycle have? 3. So TID is 3 times a day. QH, Q stands for every. Okay, quake is every. So QH is every hour. So what do you think Q2H might be?
Every 2 hours.
What do you think Q4H is? Every 4 hours. Very good. All right, QHS is every hour of sleep or insomnia, which is bedtime. That's how, it's kind of a funky way of saying bedtime, but that's what it means, bedtime. AC is before meals. PC is after meals. Ante, A stands for ante, which is before. P stands for post, which is after. And then you get down to your daily activities. You can go through all those on your own. Some are abbreviated English, like BSC is bedside mode. That actually is abbreviated English. Yay. But go down to the one I have here with a red arrow. It says NPO. Nothing by mouth. Nothing by mouth. Again, it's abbreviated Latin. It's not going to make any sense to you if you're trying to put English words in there. NPO means nothing by mouth. Let me tell you a story about this. I swear this is true. So I own the scrub shop. We have people all over come to shop with us. And one girl that used to come a lot, and this is years and years and years ago that this happened, but we're going to call her Kathy. She worked in the cath lab of a major hospital. Okay, so she worked in the cardiac cath lab. And she goes up one morning to get a patient. It's like 5 o'clock in the morning to get a patient for the first procedure of the day, cardiac cath. She walks into the patient's room and the patient's sitting up eating. And she's like, "What are you doing? You have a procedure like right now. You're not supposed to be eating." And the patient says, "I know, but the nurse brought this in and said I had to eat it before the procedure." And she's like, "That doesn't make any sense." So she goes out and finds the nurse. "What's going on? Why is the patient eating?" "They're NPO for a procedure, for a cardiac cath." And the nurse says, "Oh, I don't know. The student nurse has that patient." So she goes and finds a student nurse. What is going on? And this is the conversation as it was relayed to me. I'm going to play both parts, okay? But this is how the conversation went. "Kathy, why is the patient eating?" The student nurse, "Because the patient's NPO." "Kathy, I know the patient's NPO. We're getting ready to do a cardiac cath. Why is he eating though?" Student nurse, "Because the patient's NPO. I went and got the tray myself." "Kathy, what do you think NPO means?" Student, swear this is true. "Bananas, pineapples, and oranges." I went to dietary and had the tray made up myself. not even nanas. That's not even a word. It's not banana. Nanas. Nanas fruit tray. She got him a fruit tray. Kathy's like, we can't do the procedure now. This patient now cannot have a heart cath. I've also got a surgeon scrubbed in waiting for this patient in the cardiac cath lab. You think that surgeon's going to be happy? So turns out this student nurse apparently had missed a day on medical abbreviations or didn't do their homework or whatever the case may be and made this up. Nanas looked at NPO. What could that possibly mean? I know it has something to do with food. So let's go with it. Not understanding that medical abbreviations are not abbreviated English. Be careful about what assumptions you make. Now, to me, all I can think of is Uncle Google is your friend. At the very least, you could have Googled it. But in reality, if somebody tells us something that we don't know, should we be trying to figure it out on our own? What should we be doing? Yeah, that student nurse should have gone to the main nurse and said, hey, I know I'm a student. I missed this somewhere along the line. You can lecture me, but what does NPO mean? That's how it should have happened. Not let me fake it till I make it. When we're dealing with real people, we don't fake it till we make it. Does that make sense? NPO does not stand for nanas, pineapples, and oranges. It means nothing by mouth. All right, so page 169 has your sample documentation. This is what's going to be used on the state exam, so you can practice with it. And I also have a whole lesson on intake and output on page 107 as well that just talked about what we just talked about. So let me show you this video because I'm not feeding anybody in class. I have nothing to feed you. So I know, sad face. All right, so let me show you this video.
Hello?
Hi, Mr. Jones. My name is Patty. I'm your CNA today. Would you like a snack?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm going to go wash my hands, get my supplies, and I'll be right back. Can I ask you to sit up straight for me, please?
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Jones, let me get you a hand wipe so that you can wipe your hands. Would you like to take that? Thank you very much. Let me dispose of this. Okay, can I offer you a clothing protector?
Yes, please.
I'll just place this on your chest. Okay, it looks like we have pudding. How does that sound?
Great.
Very good. Can I offer you a drink before we get started?
Please. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, are you ready?
Yes.
There you go. Do you have any plans for this afternoon?
No, I do not.
They're showing a movie on the big screen in the activity room. Would you like me to get more information on that for you?
Yes, please.
Okay. How does the pudding taste?
Delicious.
Very good. Ready for another?
Yes, please.
Okay. Can I offer you a drink? Would you like something to drink?
Yes, please.
All right. Ready for another bite?
Yes, please.
Ready for another bite?
I'm actually full.
Are you sure you wouldn't like just one more bite?
I'm okay, thank you.
Can I get you something else from the kitchen?
No, thank you.
Okay. Let me know if you get hungry later, and we'll get something to eat. We do have food available on the unit.
Thank you.
Going to take the napkin. There we go. I'll remove this clothing protector from you, and we're going to put this in dirty linen. I'm going to go take care of your tray. I'll be right back.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to place the tray back on your table. Is there anything else I can get for you? A magazine, perhaps?
No, thank you.
Your call light is within reach. Please let me know if you should need anything. I'm going to go wash my hands and document.
Okay, thank you.
After washing my hands, I'm going to document the amount of food that this patient ate. Using my documentation form, I'll review the steps of my skill, make any corrections, and tell the evaluator my skill is done. All right. Any questions? Any questions? Yep. Okay. So page 152, we're going to get into peri-care now. And again, you know everything there is to know to do the skill. You know to read the care plan. You know to do the opening. You know to evaluate if you need gloves. And yes, you do for this skill. Absolutely. We're in a private area. We know to use a barrier for our supplies. We know to use a privacy blanket because our patient's uncovered or undressed. We know linen rules apply. We don't hold them against our uniform. Don't let them on the floor. Make sure you put them away or, dispose them if you don't use them. If we're going to turn a patient on their side, we have to make sure that they scoot toward us first to keep them safely in the middle of the bed. So scoot and roll. Whatever we wash, we rinse. Whatever we rinse, we dry. You already know that. You know how to clean your basin and you know how to do the closing. You also know the leaves method. There is nothing new here. It's all stuff that you've already covered. But what I do want to talk to you about is the peri area specifically. So we're going to learn a little bit about normal urinary system and what affects it to make a patient incontinent, and then what risks an incontinent patient has. So that's what we're going to focus on with this. But before we get there, let's read the care plan at the top of page 153. So if you look at the top page 153, our care plan tells us female resident has been incontinent of urine and needs peri-care. The pad under the resident is wet, but the hospital gown and bedding is dry. Guys, that is an absolute miracle. It will never happen that way in real life. If the patient is wet, their gown will be wet too. And probably the sheets under the pad. But we're going to take the gift they give us. Okay. For the test, this is going to be done on a female resident. So male peri-care is covered on page 154, I think it is. 154, I have a whole section there on male peri-care. And if you look back to 152 at the bottom, you'll see that this is going to be done on a mannequin, not you. Thank God for that. So this is going to be done on a female mannequin. Okay. Perineal care is often abbreviated to peri-care. You will also hear it called just cares. Both of those are appropriate. Very few people use the whole term perineal care. So let's learn a little bit about the urinary system. So in a normally functioning, yes, Caitlin, a normally functioning urinary system, you'll have kidneys. We have two. They're right about here. Okay. You have 2 kidneys, and those kidneys, their whole job is to filter the blood, take out the icky stuff, and make urine out of that icky stuff. Okay. So it's going to remove excess electrolytes, water, certain proteins. So it's going to get rid of, it's one of the kind of the trash of the body after metabolic processes have been completed. But what we need to understand is this works 24 hours a day. So your kidneys filter blood, produce urine. That urine drips. So a drip, 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 slow process, drip. So you get all these drips. And these drips come down tubes called ureters. So the kidney filters blood 24 hours a day, produces urine. Drips of urine go down ureters into the bladder. Now, the bladder is nothing more than a Ziploc bag. It just holds urine until it's convenient for you to get rid of it all at once. At the very bottom of the bladder is a valve. This valve, when it's closed, holds urine in the bladder. When you go to the bathroom, the valve opens and the urine comes out. When your bladder's empty, the valve closes again, and now you've got an empty bladder and you're ready to go for the next couple hours. How often does the kidney filter blood and produce urine? 24 hours a day. And it's going to produce drops of urine, not like a whole big gush at once, drops of urine. That urine's going to accumulate in the bladder, and the valve is what holds the bladder closed. So when we have an incontinent patient, that whole system still works. You still have kidneys. They still filter blood 24 hours a day, still produce urine, drip, drip, drip. Those drips still go down the ureters, drip, drip, drip. They still go into the bladder, drip, drip, drip. What's broken is the valve. So where do those drips go? Out. No way to hold them in. So that means that your incontinent patient is going to be wet all the time. Drip, 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 drip. Got it? If you have a patient who is dry, 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 really, really wet, this system is working. Get them to the bathroom. And this is what happens in a lot of clinical settings because CNAs think that it's easier to put an adult brief on a patient, tell them, just go, I'll clean you up later. How many of you guys would be willing to let me put an adult brief on you and make you pee your pants? Yeah, not me. Absolutely not. That's disgusting. If you have a continent patient, we don't do that for your convenience. And yet that's happening all over. Don't do that. If you have a patient that's dry, 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 really, really wet, that facility can get fined for $10,000 per occurrence. Per occurrence. Think about how many times a day you pee. Because it's taking away the patient's right to dignity. You guys understand that? So if you have somebody that needs help getting up and going to the bathroom, I know it takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of time to get them out of bed, get some shoes on them, walk them to the bathroom, help get their clothes off, get them seated, wait until they're done, get them up, wipe them up, pull their underpants back on, walk them back to the bed, take their shoes off, get them situated. I get it. It takes a lot of time, but that's what you're being paid for. Okay. This is a really big issue when state comes in to do surveys. They're looking for this on purpose because they know that CNAs out there are not doing this right. Are we allowed to alter the care plan? You'd be surprised at how many CNAs think they can. All right. So incontinent patients are always going to be wet. Drip, drip, drip. But adult urine is not like baby urine. Baby urine, very mild. You can put a diaper on a baby, put them to bed, wake them up 8 hours later, and they still have skin on their little tushes because their urine is very mild. Urine acidity is going to be based on what we eat. Babies eat very mild things, rice cereal, baby food, right? They're not eating a lot of acid. As adults, we eat a lot of acid. Coffee, acid, soda, acid, the foods that you eat, a lot of acid. So all of that acid comes out in our urine. So what do you think would happen if you held acid against skin?
It burns you.
It's going to burn it, irritate it. So we're going to get skin issues here. Where we can put a diaper on a baby and let them sleep through the night, we can't put an adult brief on an adult and let them sleep through the night. That adult brief has to be changed and the skin has to be cleaned every 2 hours around the clock. And we don't call them diapers for adults. We call them adult briefs. You will also hear them called Depends, and that's okay too, but not diapers. Now, the problem with these guys is that they hold in body heat. They block out light. And they hold urine right up next to the skin. So we end up with warm, dark, moist. Is that a good environment? No. So for this reason, we have to make sure that we change them every 2 hours around the clock and make sure that skin gets really clean, because we know as soon as we're done, they're going to drip some more. So we're going to try to every 2 hours have a period where that acid has been cleaned off. But there is a better way to do this. There is a better way.
What's the medical term difference between the one that you Velcro on and the one that you pull up?
So there is no medical term. They're both adult briefs. Okay.
So
But
they act
depends.
technically.
Yeah. Depends are usually pull up kind. And adult briefs are usually the ones with Velcro or the sticky tabs, the adhesive tabs. That's kind of the industry difference between the two. But patients will call them all Depends. They just will. Yeah, I know. It gets a little tricky. So there is a better way to approach this, though. Instead of having adult briefs on the patient that holds the urine right up against the skin, blocks out light, holds in body heat, warm, dark, moist, all that. Instead of doing that, in some patients, we will put an incontinence pad out on the bed, no adult brief. So when the urine comes out of the patient, it's drawn away from the skin, light and air can circulate. We call it open to air. So they wouldn't be wearing any undergarments or any Depends or briefs or anything like that. It reduces skin issues significantly. It also reduces infection risk significantly. Some patients aren't comfortable with it. Some patients feel the need for some sort of undergarment, and that's okay. The care plan will address that. But if the patient is agreeable and we have a lot of skin issues or infection issues, this is way better. Open to air on a pad. Now, when they're out of bed, in activities, visiting, going to church services, whatever, then an adult brief is used because that's dignity. And we would still clean them up every 2 hours and change the adult brief. But if they're in bed, open to air, way better for their skin. And that's how this skill is set up for the test. We have a female mannequin on a pad, open to air. We're going to clean the mannequin and change the pad. Good? Make sense? Let's think about that pad for a second, though. All right. So as the urine comes out, it spreads out along the pad. Room temperature always. You guys remember this? Yeah, wins. Yeah, room temperature always wins. So urine, when it comes out, is about 101 degrees because it's a little bit warmer than our body. It's right here in our furnace area. So urine, when it comes out, 100, 101 degrees, and it's going to meet 75-degree air. That means it's going to cool down. What do you think that pad's going to feel like to the patient? Cold, wet, probably a little slimy. It's going to be icky. So if you were laying on that pad, what's the first thing you'd want done? Yeah, so we're going to change the pad. We're going to clean the patient. And then we're going to change the pad again. Because when we change the pad the first time, we got a wet butt on the clean pad. So we're going to clean the front, we're going to clean the back, and then we'll change the pad again. So we have a dry patient on a dry pad ready to go for another 2 hours. Make sense? Okay. So our washing rules apply here. Remember, basins are no soap zones. We're going to get the water. What do we have to use to turn the water on? Okay, we're going to check it. What temperature should it be? Who else checks it? Okay, whatever we wash, whatever we rinse, we're going to use Leaves method because this is a wet body opening. Okay. And don't get your surface wet. That's why we have a pad under the patient during the cleaning. Good? Oh, we're just going to skip these because I went over these. All right, remember during cleaning, your patient will be uncovered, so they do need a privacy blanket for this skill. And let's see here. We are going to wear gloves because there are body fluids, and the first thing your gloves should touch is the patient, right? So first thing we want to do is change that checks out. Remember, clean rolls toward me, dirty rolls away. It tells us how to do it. We already know this skill, guys. You just don't know you know it. Okay, so clean rolls toward me, dirty rolls away. So we'll change that checks out. We're going to roll the blanket. Now, I do want to talk to you about this because this is kind of new. Okay. We have to expose this patient's peri area in order to clean it, right? So your most personal, private area, we have to expose. No way around it. But there's a big difference in how we expose. So if you take that blanket that's over the patient and you roll it up under, it's going to catch that gown as you're rolling it under. So you're rolling the gown and the blanket up together to the level of the waist. Now, when you do, that's going to be important in just a minute. But when you do that, it's going to expose the peri area. It also exposes the legs because we took, we got the blanket up here now. So now their legs are exposed, and that's going to be uncomfortable. They're going to feel not just vulnerable, but also a little cold. So I'm going to take a towel and put it on their legs. So now the only thing that's exposed is what I'm working on, the peri area. This feels way more clinical than if you just pulled the blanket up and had the whole thing exposed from the waist down. Minimize your exposure. Okay. After we do our cleaning, remember, no drippy wet washcloths. We're going to wring out those washcloths and we're going to clean in a very specific way. We're going to take leaf number 1 and go from top to bottom down the inside. Now we want to open her up just a little bit, not a lot, but just a little bit so that we can clean down the inside middle. We're going to fold that leaf over and go down the outside, top to bottom. Now, this is a one-way trip. Where is my... So I have my washcloth in my hand. I've sprayed all 5 leaves. So spray, soap, spray, soap, spray, soap, spray, soap, spray, soap. And now I'm ready to clean. So I'm going to take my washcloth, hold her open a little bit, down the inside middle, fold that over. Down the outside, fold that over. Down the other outside, fold that over. This area between the leg and the groin, the skin fold, this crease, down, fold that over, and down. Okay? Notice when I did that, I never ever went back up. You do not do this. It's one direction only. Top to bottom, pull away, fold over. Make sense? We have a lot of bacteria down here. We don't want to bring that bacteria up here. Everything that so you're only going in one direction. Everything that we wash, we the exact same way. So we're going to take that same different washcloth, hold it the same way. Once down the middle, fold our leaf. Once on one side, fold our leaf. Down the other side, fold the leaf, skin fold the leaf, skin fold. And then whatever we rinse, we dry. Always top to bottom. Never go back up. One-way trip only. You remember when we rolled that blanket up and we got her gown when we rolled it up? This is why. Now my hands have been all up in her business, my gloves. I don't want to touch that gown with gloves that have been all up in her business. So by rolling that gown up inside the blanket, when I unroll the blanket, it smooths her gown over her without me having to touch it at all. Don't touch her sheet. Where have your gloves just been? Don't touch her sheet. Now we're going to scoot her toward us, roll her on her side, and we're going to wash the back side. We're going to use leaves again because it is a wet body opening. Take our washcloth, bring it out. We're going to soap 4 corners this time. So spray soap, fold, spray, fold, spray, fold, spray. And then I'm going to take my washcloth and I'm going to go right up the center crease. So bottom up, fold that over. One cheek, fold that over. The other cheek, fold that over. And then once more, right up the middle. Because remember, this is like a riverbed. All the urine's going to run right up that crease. And then whatever we wash, same way. So we're going to rinse the same way. We use that leaves method. And then whatever we rinse, we dry. So we're going to dry bottom to top. And then we're going to, I've got to change these. Caitlin, make a note to change 129 and 130, please. To switch them. So then we're going to change the pad again. So now we've got a clean butt on a clean pad ready to go for another 2 hours. And then we'll roll our patient back onto their bed, their back in the middle of the bed. And we can dispose of all of our soiled items. So our washcloths, our towel, all of that's going to go into dirty linen. Remember that we still have our gloves on because we have to get rid of all of our stuff. So we're going to clean our basin. We're going to put it away using a paper towel. Once we get all of that done, then we can remove our gloves and pull the blanket up. Okay? Good. Restore the sheet. All right, and then we're going to do our closing. Any questions on that?
The patient turns, what if they're like a real mess,
Okay.
So would you use wipes first and then the rag, or because
You're going to go by your facility policy. Some facilities have wipes and they'll have you use them. Other facilities don't.
so you would just
Washcloths.
use
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because washcloths can be washed and they're all bleached. So it's perfectly okay. But you have to go by your facility. And the reason for that, in some facilities, it depends on how everything's structured. In some facilities, patients pay for all of their own supplies. So if we're using chucks, the patient's buying them. If we're using wipes, the patient's buying them. So the patients have to purchase all of their own supplies. Well, if you've got somebody who's very, very, very low income, they may not have wipes. They may not have the money for wipes. So in that case, we would use washcloths. Other facilities, the facility pays for everything and just bills the patient a set amount. So it depends on how the facility you're in is structured. And that's why you have to go by your policy and procedure. But yes, we can use wash rags to clean up bowel movements. In a acute care setting, hospitals, we use a special wipe for this process. And they're in wipe warmers. And you take a package out and it actually tells you on the package exactly how to use that package to clean the patient. Okay. So every facility is going to approach this a little bit differently. Good. Questions? All right, let me show you this video because it's got good close-ups and it's important that you see all of these steps. Hi, Miss Jones. My name is Patty. I'm your CNA today. How are you? Wonderful. I need to do pericare. Is that okay? Okay, let me close your curtain, wash my hands, get my supplies, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm going to start out with a barrier. This gives me a clean place to place my clean supplies. So I'll place the barrier on the overbed table. And now I'll start gathering my supplies. I'm going to need 2 chucks, 4 washcloths, a privacy blanket, a towel. I'll place these items on the overbed table. I'll need a basin and soap. And I'm going to need a set of gloves. Okay, Miss Jones, let me go fill the basin. I'll use a paper towel to turn the water on. I'll make sure it's warm, not hot, not cold, just warm. Miss Jones, would you like to check the water temperature and make sure it's okay? It's good? Good. I'll place my washcloths in the water. Okay, Miss Jones, I'm going to place this privacy blanket over you. This is going to help keep you warm and protect your privacy while we do this skill. I'm going to spread the blanket out, being careful not to shake it or snap it. And then I'm going to pull your sheet down to about your knees. Now I'll get my chucks ready for use. I'm going to unfold the chucks, hold it up lengthwise, and roll it toward me. And I'll repeat that with the second one. Clean rolls toward me, dirty rolls away. Now I'll get my gloves on. Okay, Miss Jones, in just a moment, I'm going to ask you to scoot toward me, and we're going to roll you onto your left side so I can change the chucks that's under you. I'll place one of the chucks on the bed. Miss Jones, can you scoot toward me, please? Thank you. And roll up on your left side. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to roll the dirty chucks toward the patient. Tuck it under her hip. Unroll the clean one and tuck it under the soiled. Miss Jones, can you roll back onto your back, please? Thank you. And scoot to the middle of the bed. Okay, I'll come around to the other side of the bed now. Miss Jones, can you scoot toward me, please? And roll up on your right side. 1, 2, 3. We'll remove the soiled chucks from the bed and unroll the clean one. This is going to be thrown away. Okay, Miss Jones, we're going to start cleaning now. I'm going to roll your blanket up to about your waist. This is going to expose you. Please let me know if you're uncomfortable in any way. So I'll roll the blanket up, and on the way I'm going to try to get that gown rolled inside the blanket so that exposes only the peri area. I'll cover her upper legs with a towel. And then get my first washcloth. I'm going to wring this out. And soak 5 corners. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, Miss Jones, I'm going to clean now. I'll use the heel of my hand at the top of her peri area and my index and middle finger to spread her slightly open so I can clean down the inside middle, top to bottom, and then we'll fold that leaf over. We're going to clean the outside labia, top to bottom, down one side, and fold that over. The third leaf will clean the other side of the labia, top to bottom, fold that leaf over. The fourth leaf is going to clean this area between the leg and the groin, this skin fold, top to bottom. We're going to fold that over, and we'll repeat it on this side, top to bottom. Now we'll place the washcloth back on the barrier. The second washcloth, we're going to wring out. And we're going to rinse all of those areas the same way we washed. So we're going to hold her slightly open to clean down the middle, top to bottom. Fold that over. We're going to rinse down one side of the labia, top to bottom. Fold that over. Rinse the other side of the labia, top to bottom. Fold that over. We're going to rinse the skin fold down one side, top to bottom. Fold that over. And the other skin fold, top to bottom. We'll set that aside. Now we're going to dry all of those areas using short, soft strokes or a gentle pat. I'm going to unroll the blanket, which will place her gown back over her legs. Okay, Mrs. Jones, I'm going to scoot you toward me now, and we're going to roll you onto your left side so I can clean your back side. Go ahead and scoot toward me, and we're going to roll you over onto your left side. 1, 2, 3. The evaluator will hold the mannequin in place for you to complete your cleaning of the patient's backside. Okay, I'm going to take the fourth washcloth, wring it out really well, and we're going to soak 4 corners. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to start at the anal opening and go up the center crease, right up the middle, and we'll fold that leaf over. The second leaf will clean one buttocks. We're going to fold that over. The third leaf will clean the other side of the buttocks. We'll fold that leaf over. And the fourth leaf will clean from the anal opening up the center crease one last time. We're going to set that aside. Whatever we wash, we rinse. So I'll wring that out. And I'm going to rinse the same way we washed. So from the anal opening up the center crease, fold that over. One buttocks, fold that over. The other side of the buttocks, fold that over. And once more up the center crease. And then we'll dry all of those areas. Okay, Ms. Jones, I'm going to change that pad out from under you so you're on a nice clean pad. We'll roll the soiled chucks toward the patient and tuck it under her hip. Unroll the clean chucks and tuck it under the soiled. Ms. Jones, come on back, please. And scoot to the middle. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Jones, go ahead and scoot toward me. And roll up on your right side. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. We'll remove the soiled chucks from the bed and unroll the clean. Okay. Go ahead and scoot back to the middle, please. This is going to be thrown away. Okay, Ms. Jones, I need to put all of my soiled items away and clean my basin. I'll be back in just a moment to get you situated. These items will go in dirty linen. And the basin is going to be cleaned the same way we clean everything else. We'll dump the water into the sink. Rinse the basin. Pick it up with a paper towel and dry the inside. We'll discard that paper towel. We'll dry the outside. and discard that paper towel. And then we'll get the soap. I'll use the paper towel to open the drawer and store the basin back inside. These paper towels will now be thrown away. The barrier is going to be disposed of. And now I can remove my gloves. Okay, Ms. Jones, I'm now going to gather the privacy blanket up and pull your sheet back up. So I'll collect the privacy blanket by lifting from the bottom or underside of the blanket. I'm going to pull the sheet up and ball the blanket up into a ball. That way no trailing edges will contaminate other surfaces. Okay, Ms. Jones, let me go put this in dirty linen. Are you comfortable? Is there anything else I can get for you while I'm here, like a magazine? Okay, here's your call light. If you should need anything at all, please let me know. I'm going to go open your curtain and wash my hands. After washing my hands, I'll think about the steps of my skill, make any corrections, and then let the evaluator know my skill is done.
All right. Any questions on anything we've gone over today? Any questions? No? Okay, so today you're going to have the rest of the class for practice. That's all I have to teach you today. Monday, remember that you have 2 chapters of homework tonight, chapter 8 and 9. 8 is on nutrition. It's a little bit tricky. You may want to make some flashcards on the different diets. But 9 is on rehabilitation. So 9 you will have to pay attention to as well, because a lot of what we do is going to be focused on rehabilitation, helping patients get better. Free scrub quiz on cherokee-scrubs.com. And if you haven't taken the workplace personality quiz yet, you probably want to do that as well on my main website. That will help you because we're only a week away now. And I'll be talking to you more about that on Monday and Wednesday as well, because we're going to talk about workplaces on Wednesday. Monday for class, we only have 3 skills to learn. So you're going to have about 2 hours of class time on Monday to be able to practice as well. I get through those very, very quickly because it's all stuff that we have already learned. We're going to learn catheter care, which is a variation of pericare. We're going to learn bedpan, and so toileting skills, and we're going to learn how to empty the urinary drainage bag and measure and record it. So not a whole lot. 2 hours is all I need to teach you all of that. So you'll have about 2 hours of practice time built in on Monday as well. Wednesday's graduation. Yay. And we still have a lot of stuff to go over on graduation. I'm going to talk to you about how to find a job in healthcare. I'm actually going to help you formulate your very own tell me a little bit about yourself answer. You know, when you go to an interview and they always ask you, tell me a little bit about yourself, and every one of you freezes like, I don't know what to say. There's an actual formula that you can use to write your own tell me a little bit about yourself answer that's specific to you. So we're going to go over that on Wednesday, and I have a whole worksheet for you to help you formulate your own. We're going to talk about continuing education for CNAs, as well as renewal requirements. We'll talk about finding a job. So we have a lot of stuff to cover on Wednesday, on graduation day. I will take a class photo, so make sure you're in scrubs. And you will return your yellow book on next Wednesday. So make sure you bring that back to class as well. I'll remind you on Monday too. Okay. So any last questions for me? Last questions. I'm going to give you your review sheets for today. Those of you who are joining on YouTube, you can find our review sheets on the first lesson of our online course. So Caitlin, can you put the course up there? And Caitlin, can you make sure, I thought about this earlier, can you make sure that the review sheets are actually in the description on YouTube so people can just click that link and go directly to the review sheet from YouTube? So in the description, we can put our review sheets. If you're, You're probably already doing it because you're amazing. But if you're not, can you make that priority? All right, guys. So YouTube people, we're going to go ahead and log off for today. Until next time, happy caregiving and have a fantastic weekend. Do something fun. So for the rest of you, hang out. I'll give you your review sheets. Go ahead and log me off, Caitlin.